When the weakest wolf saves the prince, everything changes. In the frozen wastelands where only the strong survive, Riven Hale, the Omega everyone called broken, made a choice that would shatter a kingdom. Bleeding in the snow, she didn't run. She didn't beg. She stood between ruthless killers and a dying wolf cub, not knowing she was protecting the cursed heir to the throne. What happened next would force the most feared Alpha King to question everything he believed about power, strength, and who deserves to lead. Stay until the end to see how one worthless Omega brought an entire kingdom to its knees. Like this video if you love underdog stories, and comment which city you're watching from. The Northern Frontier didn't forgive weakness. It didn't pause for mercy or second chances. It killed swiftly, coldly, and without remorse. And Riven Hale had always known she would die here. She just hadn't expected it to happen like this. Blood soaked through her torn shirt, warm against her ribs, even as the snowstorm screamed around her. Her left arm hung useless, shoulder dislocated from the rogue's first strike. Her vision blurred at the edges, dark spots dancing like ash in a fire. But she didn't move. Couldn't move. Not when the small white wolf cub trembled beneath her, whimpering so softly only she could hear. "Step aside, freak," the rogue snarled, circling her with lazy confidence. His eyes glowed amber in the storm's half-light, predatory and amused. "You're already dead. Don't make us work for it." Riven's teeth chattered. Not from cold, she'd stopped feeling that an hour ago, but from the effort of staying upright. "No." The word came out weak, barely a whisper, but it landed between them like a stone. The rogue laughed. It was an ugly sound, sharp and mocking. "Look at you! Can't even shift properly. What kind of wolf can't transform?" He spat into the snow. "You're not a wolf. You're a mistake." She'd heard worse. Her entire life had been a chorus of worse. Broken, defective, useless. Her wolf had never emerged cleanly, never settled into the sleek, powerful form that marked true pack members. Instead, when terror or rage forced the change, she became something in between, twisted, half-formed, grotesque. The pack healer had called it a malformation of the bloodline. Her father had called it a curse. The other Omegas had simply called her monster and kept their distance. At 17, Riven had stopped trying to prove them wrong. But the cub was different. She'd found him 3 hours ago, tangled in a hunter's trap at the base of Widow's Ridge. His leg had been mangled, nearly severed, and his white fur was matted with frozen blood. Any sensible wolf would have left him. In the frontier, you didn't waste resources on the dying. But Riven had never been sensible. She'd freed him, wrapped him in her cloak, and started the long trek back toward pack territory. She'd made it maybe 2 miles before the rogues picked up their trail. Now there were 4 of them, circling in the storm like shadows with teeth. "Last chance," the lead rogue said, drawing closer. His breath misted in the frozen air. "We don't want you. We want the cub." White wolves fetch a high price in the Eastern Kingdoms. Blood magic, ritual sacrifice, doesn't matter. Gold is gold. He tilted his head, almost curious. "Why die for something that's not even yours?" Riven's fingers dug into the snow. The cub's heartbeat fluttered against her chest, rapid and terrified. "Because someone has to," she whispered. The rogue's smile vanished. "Wrong answer." He lunged. Riven didn't think. Thinking would have paralyzed her. She threw herself sideways, cradling the cub against her body as she hit the ground. Pain exploded through her injured shoulder, white-hot and blinding. The rogue's claws missed her throat by inches, raking across her back instead. She screamed. Blood sprayed across pristine snow, startlingly red against white. The world tilted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see. Protect him. The thought cut through the agony like a blade. Instinct older than language, older than reason. The cub whimpered, and something deep in Riven's chest shifted. Not her wolf, not the clean transformation she'd spent 17 years failing to achieve. Something else. Her bones began to crack. "Oh, hell," one of the other rogues muttered. "She's changing." "Good," the leader growled. "Let's see what the freak really looks like." The transformation felt like being torn apart and badly stitched back together. Riven's spine elongated, vertebrae popping one after another like firecrackers. Her jaw distended, teeth lengthening into fangs that didn't quite fit her mouth. Fur sprouted in patches, thick here, sparse there, her body unable to decide what it wanted to be. When she stood, she was neither human nor wolf. She was something caught between, hunched, asymmetrical. Her right arm had extended into something like a foreleg, clawed and powerful, while her left remained stubbornly human, shoulder still screaming in protest. Her face had pushed forward into a muzzle, but her eyes stayed disturbingly human, wide and terrified and absolutely furious. The rogue stared. "What the fuck?" one started. Riven didn't let him finish. She launched forward with a speed that surprised even her, that strange hybrid body moving in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Her clawed hand caught the nearest rogue across the face, tearing through fur and flesh. He went down hard, screaming. The leader recovered first, shifting into his full wolf form, a massive gray beast, easily 3 times Riven's twisted size. He hit her like a battering ram, jaws snapping toward her throat. She twisted, taking the bite on her deformed shoulder instead. Agony whited out her vision, but she wrapped her human arm around his neck, holding on even as he shook her like a rag doll. Her claws found his ribs, punched through. He yelped and released her. They separated, both bleeding, both panting. The storm howled around them, indifferent to their violence. "You can't win," the rogue growled, circling again. "You're already dying. I can smell it." He was right. Riven could feel her heartbeat slowing, thick and sluggish. The cold was winning, seeping into her bones. Her hybrid form was already starting to fail, muscles spasming as her body tried desperately to choose between human and wolf and succeeded at neither. But the cub was still alive, still hidden in the snow where she'd pushed him. That was enough. "Then I'll die slow," Riven said, her voice distorted by the muzzle, words slurring. "Slow enough to take you with me." The rogue's ears flattened. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes that might have been respect or fear. Hard to tell the difference when you were both covered in blood. He lunged again. This time, Riven didn't dodge. She met him head on, and they collided in a tangle of claws and teeth and desperate fury. She felt ribs crack, couldn't tell if they were his or hers. Her clawed hand found his eye, dug in. He howled and bit down on her leg, shattering bone. She didn't let go. They fell together into the snow, rolling, tearing at each other. The world became nothing but pain and the metallic taste of blood and the distant sound of the cub crying. Just a little longer, Riven thought, clinging to consciousness by pure spite. Just hold on. A horn blast cut through the storm, deep, resonant, unmistakable. The royal hunt. The rogue leader's head snapped up, eyes wide. Shit! He wrenched himself free from Riven's grip, blood streaming from his ruined eye socket. Fall back! Now! But the cub, now! The rogue scattered into the storm like smoke, leaving only blood-stained snow and silence in their wake. Riven collapsed. Her hybrid form shuddered once, twice, then gave up entirely. She reverted to human in a rush that felt like every bone breaking simultaneously. She lay in the snow, naked and bleeding, her blood spreading in a dark halo around her. The cub crawled over, whimpering. He pressed his small body against hers, trying to share warmth she no longer had. Son. It's okay, Riven slurred, her lips already turning blue. You're safe. Hoofbeats, voice, the crunch of boots on snow. Over here, I've got blood. Check for survivors. Wait, holy hell, is that? Get the alpha, now. Riven tried to focus, but her eyes wouldn't cooperate. She could make out shapes, tall figures in dark cloaks, armed with silver weapons that gleamed even in the storm. Royal hunters. She'd never seen them up close before. Pack Omegas didn't get invited to the king's hunts. One of the figures knelt beside her. Strong hands, surprisingly gentle, tilted her face up. She's alive. Barely. A pause. And this wolf cub. Commander, this is a white wolf. There aren't supposed to be any white wolves left in the frontier. Then we're taking both of them. The new voice was deeper, edged with authority. Carefully. If the alpha finds out we let a survivor die because we were too rough. The alpha's here. Everyone went still. Riven felt it before she saw him, a presence that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up despite the cold and the blood loss, and the fact that she was pretty sure she was dying. Power rolled off him in waves, primal and absolute. Alpha dominance so thick you could choke on it. Footsteps approached. Slow. Deliberate. A shadow fell across her face, blocking out the storm. "Report," the Alpha said, and his voice was exactly what Riven expected from someone whose reputation preceded him like a winter storm. Darian Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Frontier. The man who'd united 12 warring packs through a combination of strategic brilliance and sheer terrifying strength. They said he'd never lost a challenge. They said he could break a wolf's neck with one hand. They said a lot of things. Female Omega, mid-teens, severe blood loss, and exposure, the kneeling hunter reported crisply. Multiple lacerations, possible internal bleeding, one shoulder dislocated, left leg fractured, transformation residue. He hesitated. Unusual. Can't identify the pattern. And the cub? White wolf, maybe 3 months old, injured but stable. Sir, the cub was protected. She put herself between him and the rogues. Silence. Riven forced her eyes open, just a fraction. Through the blur in the snow, she could make out a figure standing over her. Tall, broad-shouldered. Dark hair whipping in the wind. She couldn't see his face, backlit as he was by the storm, but she felt his gaze on her like a physical weight. This Omega, Darian said slowly, fought off rogues. In her condition. Yes, sir. Tracks suggest at least 4 attackers. She took down 2 before we arrived. Another pause, longer this time. Then Darian Voss knelt in the snow beside her. Up close, his face was sharp angles and old scars. The kind of features that spoke of violence survived rather than avoided. His eyes were dark gray, storm-colored, and they studied her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. "What's your name?" he asked. Riven's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her tongue felt thick, useless. The cub, still pressed against her side, made a soft sound. Not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. Protective. Something flickered in the Alpha's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Get her to the Citadel," he said, standing abruptly. "Both of them. And send for the High Healer. Tell him—" He paused, jaw tight. "Tell him I need him to save an Omega." "But, sir, the storm—" "I didn't ask for weather commentary. Move." Hands lifted Riven carefully, wrapping her in warm furs that felt like heaven against her frozen skin. The cub yelped in protest as someone tried to separate them. "Together," Darian said sharply. "The cub stays with her." As they carried her toward whatever waited in the Citadel, Riven felt the cub's small body tucked against her chest, his heartbeat steady and strong. Her vision was fading, darkness creeping in from all sides. The last thing she saw before consciousness slipped away entirely was the Alpha King's face, staring after them with an expression she couldn't read. The last thing she thought was, "I didn't die." And the last thing she felt, as the darkness finally claimed her, was something that might have been triumph. She'd been called weak her entire life, broken, useless. But she'd saved him. The cub was alive. Maybe that was enough. Maybe, for once in her wasted life, she'd done something that mattered. The Citadel was carved into the mountain itself, a fortress of black stone and ancient magic that had stood for 300 years. Riven had only seen it from a distance before, a dark crown against the skyline, home to the Alpha King and his court. She never thought she'd see the inside. When she woke, and she was genuinely surprised to wake at all, she was in a room that smelled of herbs and wood smoke. Clean linen sheets covered her instead of snow. Warmth pressed against her skin instead of killing cold. She was alive. "You're awake." Riven's head turned too fast. The room spun. When it settled, she found an elderly man sitting beside her bed, his eyes sharp despite his age. He wore the silver and green robes of a high healer, prestigious and rare. "The cub," Riven croaked. Her throat felt like she'd swallowed gravel. "Alive and remarkably stubborn," the healer said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Refused to leave your side until we convinced him you'd survive. Even then, he only moved to the next room. He's been pacing ever since." Relief flooded through her, so intense it hurt. "You saved him," the healer continued, studying her with unsettling focus. "Saved the prince, actually." Riven blinked. "What?" "The cub you protected. That's Prince Kale Voss, the Alpha King's only son. He let that sink in for a moment. He's been missing for 2 weeks. The entire kingdom has been searching, and you found him in a hunter's trap, barely alive, and decided to carry him through a storm while bleeding out yourself. The healer leaned back, shaking his head. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Foolish? Riven whispered. Definitely foolish. Perhaps. He stood, gathering his supplies. But the prince is alive because of your foolishness. That matters here. He paused at the door. The Alpha King will want to speak with you. Tomorrow, after you've rested. For now, sleep. Your body needs it. He left. Riven lay in the clean bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process. Prince Kyle. The cub was the prince. She'd saved the heir to the throne. A soft scratching sound came from the door. Then a gentle push, and it swung open enough for a small white wolf cub to squeeze through. He limped. His injured leg was carefully bandaged, but his eyes were bright and alert. He jumped onto the bed with some difficulty, curled up against Riven's side exactly like he had in the snow, and sighed contentedly. You're supposed to be resting, Riven said, but she was already reaching out, fingers tangling in his soft fur. The cub made a sound, half purr, half growl, and pressed closer. And in her head, clear as daylight, she heard, "You didn't leave me." Riven went rigid. What? They always leave. Everyone leaves. But you didn't. I'm hearing things, she said faintly. Blood loss, trauma. I'm hallucinating. You're not. The voice was young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, achingly earnest. I can speak to you. Only you. I don't know why, but I can. Riven stared at the cub, at Prince Kale. His eyes met hers, impossibly intelligent, heartbreakingly hopeful. How? She whispered. Magic. Curse. Does it matter? He shifted, resting his small head on her chest. You saved me. You didn't have to, but you did. Everyone else would have left me. Even my father's hunters would have prioritized the mission over one injured cub. You're the prince. Of course they wouldn't. They didn't know it was me. Not at first. You didn't know either. His mental voice grew softer. You saved me because I needed help, not because of who I was. That's different. Riven didn't know what to say to that. She'd never been good with words, with comfort. Her entire life had been about survival, not connection. But she kept her hand on his fur, gentle and steady. Will you stay? Kale asked, so quietly she almost didn't hear. Please? I'm not going anywhere, Riven said, and meant it. The cub, the prince, settled against her with a sound that might have been relief. Outside, the storm still raged. But in that moment, in that room, something fragile and unexpected took root. Trust. Darian Voss stood at the window of his study, watching snow batter the mountain. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, hard angles, old scars, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten too little. The Omega's awake, his second-in-command reported from the doorway. Healer says she'll survive. And my son? Refused to leave her side. Threw a fit when we tried to separate them. A pause. Sir, the cub won't shift back. We've tried everything. He's locked in wolf form. Darian's jaw tightened. Cursed? Possibly. The healer wants to run tests, but Kale won't let anyone close except the Omega. Of course he wouldn't. Darian had seen it in the snow, in those last moments before they'd brought Riven to the Citadel. The way his son, his missing, presumed dead son, had pressed against that broken Omega like she was the only safe thing in the world. And maybe she was. What do we know about her, he asked. Riven Hale, 17, low-ranked Omega from the Ashwood Pack, eastern border. Father's a tracker, mother died in childbirth. No siblings. His second paused, consulting notes. Recorded transformation, anomaly. Can't achieve full shift, classified as defective. Defective, Darian repeated, voice flat. Their words, not mine. Darian turned from the window. This defective Omega killed 2 rogues while protecting my son, survived injuries that should have killed her. And now my son, who hasn't spoken in weeks, hasn't trusted anyone, won't leave her side. He met his second's gaze. I don't care what the Ashwood Pack thinks. I want her here. As what? A servant? A ward? As Kale's guardian. The decision settled in Darian's chest, solid and right. If he trusts her, that's enough. Give her a room in the royal wing, provide whatever she needs, and make it clear, very clear, that anyone who insults or threatens her answers to me directly. His second nodded slowly. The court won't like this. The court, Darian said coldly, can learn to adapt. Because something had shifted in the snow, watching that Omega choose death over abandoning a stranger, watching her fight with a body that betrayed her, with strength that shouldn't have existed, watching her prove that weakness was just another word people used when they didn't understand power. And Darian Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Frontier, was very interested in understanding. The whispers started before Riven even left her room. She heard them through the thick stone walls, voices that thought themselves quiet, dripping with disdain and barely concealed disgust. 3 days had passed since she'd woken in the Citadel. 3 days of healing under the watchful eye of the High Healer while Kale refused to leave her side. 3 days of being invisible, forgotten in the aftermath of the prince's miraculous return. That invisibility ended the moment Darian summoned her to court. "You can't be serious," a woman's voice hissed outside Riven's door. "That thing, as the prince's guardian? She's barely better than a rogue herself." "I heard she can't even shift properly," another voice added. "Malformed. Defective. What kind of example does that set? The Alpha King has lost his mind. Grief over his son's disappearance must have..." Riven stopped listening. She'd heard variations of this her entire life. The words changed, but the contempt underneath stayed the same. Kale growled softly from where he sat beside her, hackles raised. "Don't let them see it bothers you," his voice whispered in her mind. "That's what they want." "I know," Riven murmured, smoothing down the simple gray dress the servants had provided. It was finer than anything she'd owned before, soft wool that didn't scratch, but it felt wrong on her skin, like wearing someone else's life. "You look nice." "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "You look brave." Riven glanced down at him. The cub, the prince, stared up at her with eyes too old for his small face. The bandage on his leg had been changed that morning, clean white against his pristine fur. "We should go," she said, "before I lose my nerve entirely." The walk through the Citadel was exactly as awful as she'd anticipated. Servants pressed themselves against walls as she passed, their eyes tracking her with the same wariness people usually reserve for wild animals. Guards watched her with hands resting on sword hilts. Nobles, draped in furs and jewels, didn't even try to hide their stares. "Is that her? The deformed one?" Poor prince, having to rely on that. Kale's growl deepened. Riven felt his anger through whatever strange bond connected them, hot and fierce. "I could bite them," he offered seriously. "I'm the prince. They can't punish me." Despite everything, Riven almost smiled. "Save your teeth for people who actually matter." The throne room was massive, carved from the mountain's heart, with columns of black stone that stretched up into shadow. Banners bearing the royal crest hung from the walls, silver wolves on fields of midnight blue. At the far end, elevated on a dais of polished granite, sat the Alpha King. Darian Voss looked different in full regalia, more distant. The informal hunter's gear was gone, replaced by formal court dress, black leather and silver clasps, a cloak that pooled around his throne like spilled ink. A crown of twisted iron sat on his dark hair, simple but undeniable. He looked every inch the king who'd united the frontier through blood and brilliance, and Riven was supposed to approach him, alone. In front of what looked like half the kingdom's nobility, her legs felt like water. "You saved me," Kale reminded her gently. "You fought rogues while dying. You can handle some judgmental aristocrats." "Rogues were easier," Riven muttered. But she walked forward anyway, Kale limping beside her, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Eyes followed her progress, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, all watching the broken Omega who'd somehow earned the Alpha King's attention. She stopped at the base of the dais, uncertain. Should she bow? Kneel? She'd never been to court before, had no idea what protocol demanded. "Riven Hale," Darian's voice carried effortlessly through the chamber. "Approach." She climbed the steps, each one feeling steeper than the last. Up close, she could see the lines around Darian's eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. He couldn't be more than 30, but he carried himself like someone who'd already lived 3 lifetimes. His storm gray eyes met hers, and she felt that same unsettling weight from the snow, like he could see straight through her skin to whatever broken thing lurked underneath. "You saved my son," he said. Not a question, a statement. Yes, sir. Your Majesty. Riven's face burned. Yes. A muscle twitched in Darian's jaw. It might have been amusement. "You protected him when you had every reason to run. Fought off rogues while injured, nearly died keeping him safe." He paused. "Why?" Riven blinked. "Why? Why risk your life for a stranger, an injured cub you had no obligation to?" The question hung in the air. The entire court seemed to lean forward, waiting for her answer. Riven looked down at Kyle, who sat beside her with perfect princely composure despite the limp. His white fur gleamed in the torchlight, and his eyes, deep amber, intelligent beyond measure, watched her with something that might have been hope. "Because he needed help," Riven said simply. That was enough. Silence rippled through the throne room. Then Darian stood. He was tall, taller than she'd realized in the snow. His presence filled the space, commanding and absolute. He descended the steps until he stood directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the old scars crossing his throat, pale lines against tanned skin. "My son," Darian said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "has been cursed, trapped in wolf form for reasons we don't yet understand. He can't speak, can't shift, can't defend himself if enemies strike." He paused, letting that sink in. "He needs a guardian, someone loyal, brave, and willing to put his safety above their own life." Oh no, Riven could see where this was going. "You've already proven you possess all 3 qualities," Darian continued. "Therefore, I'm offering you a position. Guardian to the Crown Prince. You'll live in the royal wing, train with my personal guard, and remain at Kale's side at all times." His eyes bored into hers. "Do you accept?" The throne room erupted. "Your Majesty, you can't be serious. A defective Omega as the prince's guardian? This is madness. The bloodline will be tainted." Silence. Darian didn't shout, but his voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. The room fell quiet instantly, the kind of quiet that came from genuine fear. "I don't recall asking for the court's opinion. I asked her." He looked back at Riven. "Well?" Riven's mind raced. This was insane. She had no training, no status, no reason to be trusted with something this important. She was the Omega they'd called broken, the girl her own pack had been happy to forget. "Please," Kale's voice whispered urgently. "Please say yes. I trust you. Only you." And that somehow mattered more than all the logic screaming at her to refuse. "Yes," Riven said. "I accept." The court exploded again, but Riven barely heard it. She was too focused on Darian's face, watching for some sign she'd made the right choice. He nodded once, sharp and final. "Then it's done." He raised his voice. "Riven Hale is hereby appointed royal guardian to Prince Kyle Voss. She speaks with my authority where the prince's safety is concerned. Anyone who questions this decision," his gaze swept the room, cold and promising violence, "questions me directly." No one spoke. "You're dismissed," Darian said, "except you." He nodded at Riven. "We need to talk privately." The throne room emptied quickly after that, nobles and servants fleeing like water down a drain. Within minutes, only 3 remained: Darian, Riven, and Kale. Darian's formal demeanor cracked slightly. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "That went better than expected." "Better?" Riven's voice came out higher than intended. "They looked ready to riot. They always look like that. Nobles live for drama." He descended the remaining steps, his movements more relaxed now that the performance was over. "But they won't challenge the decision. Not openly. I've made my position clear." Kale made a pleased sound and pressed against Riven's leg. "Can he really not speak?" Riven asked carefully. "To anyone?" Darian's expression shuddered. "No, not since the curse took hold." He crouched in front of his son. one hand hovering near the cub's head, but not quite touching. We've tried everything. Healers, mages, old magic and new. Nothing works. He's trapped. I can speak to her, Cale said in Riven's mind. Tell him. Riven hesitated. This felt too personal, too strange. He can speak to me, in my head. I don't know how, but... Darian's head snapped up. What? I know it sounds impossible, but I hear his voice, clear as day. He's been talking to me since I woke up. For a long moment, Darian just stared at her. Then he looked at his son. Is this true? Cale yipped and nodded. Tell him I'm sorry, the young voice said quietly. Sorry I got caught. Sorry I'm stuck like this. Sorry I'm not the son he needs. Riven's throat tightened. He says he's sorry for getting caught, for being stuck, for not being... She couldn't finish it. Stop. Darian's voice was rough. He finally touched his son, one hand gentle on the cub's head. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Do you understand me? Cale whimpered and pressed into his father's palm. The moment stretched, heavy with things Riven didn't have names for. Then Darian stood, his walls slamming back into place. If you can truly communicate with him, he said to Riven, that changes things. You're not just a guardian, you're a translator, a bridge. He started pacing, and Riven could practically see his tactical mind working. This gives us an advantage. If enemies think Cale can't communicate, can't relay information, you want to use him as bait, Riven said flatly. Darian stopped. I want to protect him. But if his condition can also serve a strategic purpose, he's your son. He's the crown prince. There's a difference. Riven felt anger spike, hot and unexpected. No, there isn't. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Darian's eyes narrowed, and for a heartbeat, Riven remembered exactly who she was talking to. The Alpha King. The man who could end her with a word. But Cale pressed harder against her leg, and she felt his approval through their strange bond. Careful, Darian said softly. You're new here. You don't understand the stakes. I understand a child who's scared and cursed and needs his father to see him as more than a political asset. Riven lifted her chin, even though her hands were shaking. You asked me to be his guardian. That means protecting him, even from you if necessary. Silence. Then, impossibly, Darian smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, too sharp, too knowing, but it was genuine. Good, he said. You'll need that spine. The court will test you at every turn. They'll try to undermine you, manipulate you, use you. He stepped closer, and Riven fought the urge to back away. But if you mean what you just said, if you'll truly put my son first, politics be damned, then maybe I chose correctly after all. You did, Cale said in Riven's mind. I like her. She doesn't bow. What did he say? Darian asked. Riven's lips twitched. That he likes me because I don't bow. Darian actually laughed, short and surprised. He would say that. The amusement faded. Your quarters are ready. Royal Wing, 3rd floor, West Tower. You'll have 2 guards posted outside at all times, for your protection as much as his. Training starts tomorrow at dawn with Commander Thorne. He's been instructed to be, thorough. What kind of training? Combat, strategy, court politics. Everything you'll need to survive here. Darian's expression turned serious. Make no mistake, Riven. You're walking into a viper's nest. Half the nobles want Cale dead because his curse makes him look weak. The other half want to use him to control me. You're now standing between them and their goals. They will come for you. The words should have terrified her. Maybe they did, somewhere deep down. But Riven looked at Cale, at the small white wolf who'd chosen to trust her when everyone else called her broken, and found she didn't care. Let them try, she said. The Royal Wing was nothing like Riven expected. She'd imagined gilded cages and silk prisons, spaces designed to impress rather than comfort. Instead, her quarters were surprisingly practical. A bedroom, a sitting room, and a small study, all connected by carved wooden doors. The furniture was simple but well made, the walls bare stone rather than tapestried, and the windows looked out over the training grounds instead of the formal gardens. The previous guardian lived here, a servant explained nervously, setting down fresh linens, before the prince disappeared. What happened to him? Riven asked. The servant's face went carefully blank. No one knows. He vanished the same night as the prince. She curtsied quickly. I'll leave you to settle in. If you need anything, pull the bell cord. She fled before Riven could ask more questions. Kael jumped onto the bed, circling 3 times before settling with a contented sigh. This is better. The old guardian's room smelled like fear. Did you like him? The old guardian? He was fine, professional, but he never asked what I wanted, what I needed. He followed orders. The cub's mental voice grew quieter. You're different. Riven sat beside him, exhaustion finally catching up. The bed was soft. Too soft, actually. She'd spent 17 years on a straw mattress. This felt like floating. Different isn't always good, she said. It is to me. A knock on the door interrupted them. Riven tensed, but a familiar voice called out. It's Thorn, commander of the Royal Guard. May I enter? Yes? The door opened to reveal a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same granite as the citadel. Tall, broad, with iron-gray hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He wore the black and silver of the Royal Guard, and his eyes assessed Riven with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime evaluating threats. So you're the Omega who killed 2 rogues with a broken body. His voice was gravel and smoke. Impressive. Stupid, but impressive. Riven bristled. I didn't have much choice. We always have choices. You chose to fight instead of run. That says something. He stepped into the room, moving with the careful grace of a trained fighter. The Alpha King says you're to train with me. Learn to protect the prince properly. I already protected him. You survived through luck and desperation. That won't work against trained assassins. Thorn's gaze flicked to Kael. Your Highness. The cub inclined his head regally. Can you fight? Thorn asked Riven bluntly. Any combat training at all? Does fighting off drunks who cornered me in alleys count? Barely. He crossed his arms. Can you shift? The question hit like a physical blow. Riven's jaw tightened. Not properly. It doesn't work right. Show me. What? Shift. Now. I need to see what we're working with. Riven stood, anger and old shame warring in her chest. I told you, it doesn't work. I'm malformed. Defective. It's not. I didn't ask for excuses. I asked you to shift. He's trying to help, Kael said gently, not mock you. Easy for you to say, Riven muttered. But she closed her eyes, reaching for that place inside where her wolf should have lived. The transformation started the way it always did. Painful, wrong, like her bones couldn't decide what shape they wanted to hold. Her spine arched, vertebrae popping. Fur sprouted in patches, thick here, absent there. Her jaw extended into something between muzzle and human face, teeth elongating unevenly. When she opened her eyes, she was that thing again. Neither human nor wolf, hunched and asymmetrical, one arm lengthened into a clawed foreleg, while the other stayed stubbornly human. Her breathing was ragged, painful. She waited for Thorn's disgust, his dismissal. Instead, he circled her slowly, studying her hybrid form with professional interest. Interesting, he said finally. You're not stuck between forms. You're creating a third option. Riven's distorted voice came out garbled. It's broken. It's different. Thorn stopped in front of her. Most wolves shift completely or not at all. You're doing something else entirely. It's unstable, yes. Unpredictable. But it's not useless. He gestured at her clawed arm. That's as strong as any full wolf's foreleg. And you maintain human cognition, human problem-solving. Do you understand what that means? She shook her malformed head. It means you can think and tear someone's throat out simultaneously. Most wolves in full shift are driven by instinct. You're not. He actually smiled, and it was terrifying. We're not going to fix your transformation. We're going to weaponize it. I like him, Kael announced. He's mean but smart. Riven let the shift drop, reverting to human with the usual rush of breaking and reforming. She stood there, breathing hard, dressed only in the shift she wore under her dress since transforming shredded normal clothes. Training starts at dawn, Thorne said. Wear something you can move in. We'll begin with the basics: balance, leverage, using your hybrid form's advantages instead of fighting them. He headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. The court thinks you're weak because you can't shift properly. Let them. Underestimated enemies are useful enemies. He left. Riven sagged onto the bed, muscles trembling from the transformation. Kale nuzzled against her, warm and reassuring. See, he said, you're not broken, just different. Different, Riven echoed. Right. But for the first time in her life, the word didn't feel like an insult. No. Dawn came too early and too cold. Riven stood in the training yard, breath misting in the frozen air, wearing borrowed combat leathers that were slightly too large. Around her, members of the Royal Guard ran drills, sparring, shifting, practicing formations with military precision. They all stopped to stare when she arrived. Ignore them, Thorne said, appearing at her elbow like a particularly aggressive ghost. Eyes on me. For the next 3 hours, he put Riven through exercises that made her previous fight with the rogues look like a pleasant stroll. Balance drills on narrow beams, strength training with weights that made her arms scream, flexibility work that revealed exactly how inflexible 17 years of survival had made her, and shifting, over and over and over. Again, Thorne barked as Riven collapsed in her hybrid form, panting and shaking. You're holding back. Stop treating it like a punishment and start treating it like a weapon. I can't, Riven gasped. Can't hold it. Then don't hold it. Let it flow. Your body wants to find balance. You're the one forcing it into categories. He crouched beside her. Human, wolf, those are just labels. Stop trying to be one or the other. Be you. Riven wanted to argue, but she was too exhausted. She let the shift drop, reverted to human, and immediately Thorne made her do it again. By the time he finally called a break, the sun was high and Riven's entire body felt like one giant bruise. Better, Thorne said, which from him probably counted as effusive praise. You held the hybrid form for 3 minutes that time. Tomorrow we'll aim for 5. Tomorrow I'll be dead. Probably not. You're tougher than you look. He tossed her a water skin. Rest. Then report to the strategy master at noon. The Alpha King wants you educated. Riven groaned but didn't argue. She found Kale waiting at the edge of the training ground, watching with keen interest. That looked painful, he said. It was. But you didn't quit. Couldn't. Thorne would have hunted me down. Still counts. The cub fell into step beside her as she limped toward the citadel. The guards are talking about you. I noticed the staring. Not bad talk, curious talk. You're different from what they expected. Story of my life. They were halfway across the courtyard when a voice called out, Well, well, the broken guardian. Riven turned to find a woman approaching, tall, elegant, with copper-red hair and amber eyes that marked her as highborn. Her dress was expensive silk, her bearing radiating privilege. Lady Seraphine Blackwood, the woman said, not extending her hand. I wanted to meet the Omega who's captured the Alpha King's attention. I haven't captured anything, Riven said carefully. I'm just doing my job. Your job? Seraphine's smile was sharp. How quaint. Tell me, do you actually believe you can protect the prince? You, who can't even shift properly. Kale growled, but Riven put a hand on his head. I've protected him once already, she said evenly. I'll do it again if needed. Against rogues, perhaps. But what about trained assassins? Court intrigue? Political machinations? Seraphine circled slowly, predatory. You're out of your depth, girl. This isn't the frontier wilds, this is civilization, and you're... Her eyes raked over Riven dismissively. Very clearly not civilized. I could definitely bite her, Kale offered. Just a little. Riven fought down a smile. Is there a point to this conversation, Lady Blackwood? Or did you just want to insult me directly? Seraphine's expression hardened. A warning, actually. The Alpha King may have granted you position, but position doesn't grant you respect. The court will test you, break you. And when you fail, and you will fail, we'll be ready to install a proper guardian, someone worthy. Someone like you? Someone better than you, which, frankly, isn't a high bar. Seraphine leaned in close. You're a temporary amusement, Omega. Enjoy your borrowed importance while it lasts. It won't. She swept away, leaving Riven standing in the courtyard with clenched fists and racing heart. I really want to bite her, Kale said. Get in line, Riven muttered. But the encounter left her unsettled. Seraphine was right about one thing. Riven was out of her depth. She didn't know court politics, didn't understand the subtle wars being waged with smiles and insinuation. She only knew how to survive. The question was, would that be enough? The answer came 3 days later during dinner. Riven had been avoiding the Great Hall, taking meals in her quarters with Kale instead. But Darian had made it clear she was expected to attend formal dinners, to be seen, to integrate into court life. So she sat at the high table, acutely aware of every eye on her, every whispered conversation that stopped when she passed. The food was elaborate, 7 courses, each more complex than the last. Riven had no idea which fork to use or how to eat without looking like a feral animal. Kale sat beside her chair, visible proof of her purpose. You're doing fine, a voice said from her left. Riven turned to find a young man watching her with kind eyes. He was maybe 20, with sandy hair and a friendly smile. First formal dinner? Is it that obvious? Only to people paying attention. I'm Marcus Ashford, by the way. 3rd son, which means I'm decorative and largely useless. He grinned. You're Riven, the Omega everyone can't stop talking about. Talking about or talking at? Both, probably. His expression turned more serious. For what it's worth, I think what you did was brave, saving the prince. I didn't have much choice. Everyone has choices. You made a good one. He nodded toward Kale. His Highness certainly thinks so. Before Riven could respond, a commotion erupted at the far end of the hall. Servants rushed forward, and Riven caught a glimpse of someone collapsing. A noble, clutching his throat, face turning red. Poison! Someone shouted. He's been poisoned! Chaos exploded. Nobles leaped back from their plates. Guards rushed forward. And Riven's instincts, honed by 17 years of expecting violence, kicked in immediately. She grabbed Kyle, pulling him away from the table just as someone, a servant, face covered, lunged toward them with a dagger gleaming in their hand. The blade aimed straight for the prince. Riven didn't think. She shifted. The transformation ripped through her faster than ever before, fueled by pure terror. Her hybrid form erupted, clawed arm extending, jaw distending, that terrible half-state that marked her as broken. But broken didn't mean weak. She caught the assassin's wrist in her clawed hand, bones crunching under her grip. The dagger clattered to the floor. The assassin screamed. Guards converged, but Riven had already slammed the attacker into the ground, her weight, heavier and stranger in this form, pinning them down. Don't move, she snarled, the words distorted but clear. Don't even breathe wrong. The assassin went limp. The great hall fell silent. Every eye stared at Riven's monstrous form, crouched over the would-be killer, protecting the white wolf cub pressed against the wall behind her. Then Darian's voice cut through the quiet. Well, that answers the question of whether she can actually protect him. Riven looked up to find the Alpha King standing, utterly calm, watching her with something that might have been approval. Someone remove the assassin, he continued, and someone please assure Lady Riven she can release her form. The threat is contained. Slowly, Riven let the shift drop. She reverted to human, standing in the middle of the great hall in shredded dinner clothes, breathing hard and shaking with adrenaline. Kyle rushed to her side immediately, pressing against her legs. You were amazing, his voice said fiercely. Did you see their faces? Nobody's calling you weak now. Riven looked around the hall. He was right. The stares had changed, still wary, still uncertain, but now tinged with something else. Fear, maybe, or respect. Marcus Ashford started clapping, slowly at first, then louder. One by one, others joined, some genuine, some clearly forced, but the sound built until it filled the hall. Seraphine Blackwood did not clap. She sat frozen, her perfect composure cracked, staring at Riven with something that looked like fury. Darian descended from the high table and approached Riven. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the careful control keeping his alpha instincts in check. You acted without hesitation, he said quietly. Put yourself between the threat and my son. That's exactly what I need from you. I just reacted, Riven managed. Good reactions keep people alive. He glanced at the captured assassin, now being hauled away by guards. This won't be the last attempt. You understand that? Yes. And you're still willing to stand as his guardian? Riven looked down at Kale, who stared up at her with absolute trust. Yes, she said. I am. Darian nodded once, then turned to address the hall. Let this serve as a demonstration. The prince's guardian is not decoration. She is functional, fierce, and fully capable of ending threats. Remember that the next time you question my judgment. The message was clear. The challenge had been issued and met. But as Riven returned to her quarters later, Kale padding beside her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. You were incredible, Kale said for the 10th time. The way you moved, nobody expected that. Nobody expected me to be competent at all. Their mistake. He jumped onto the bed, curling into a ball. Will you stay? Even though it's dangerous? Riven settled beside him, suddenly exhausted. Where else would I go? Home. Your old pack? I don't have a home. Not really, never did. You do now, Kale said quietly. If you want it, here, with us. The words settled into Riven's chest, warm and unexpected. A home. Not borrowed, not temporary. Hers. Yeah, she whispered, one hand resting on the cub's soft fur. I think I do. Outside, the mountain wind howled against stone. Inside, for the first time in Riven's life, she felt safe enough to close her eyes without expecting violence. It wouldn't last. She knew that. The court was still hostile, the threat still circling, and her position remained precarious. But tonight, in this moment, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, broken things could still find where they belonged. The assassin broke under interrogation within 2 days. Riven wasn't supposed to be there. The dungeons beneath the citadel were off limits to anyone without explicit clearance. But Darian had summoned her anyway. She descended the spiral stairs with Kale at her side, the air growing colder and damper with each step, until they reached a corridor lit by sputtering torches that cast more shadow than light. In here, Thorne said, opening a heavy iron door. The interrogation room was exactly as bleak as Riven expected. Stone walls slick with moisture, chains bolted to the floor, and in the center, slumped in a chair, the servant who'd tried to kill Kale during dinner. They looked smaller now, stripped of their disguise and bravado. Just a person, scared and broken. Darian stood against the far wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Tell her, he said flatly. Everything you told me. The prisoner's head lifted. Their eyes were swollen from crying, face bruised from resistance. Lady Seraphine Blackwood, they whispered. She paid me 500 gold pieces to kill the prince during the dinner. Said it had to look like an accident, but when that failed, they swallowed hard. She said the broken guardian would be easy to get past, that she'd freeze or fail. Riven's hands clenched. Why does Seraphine want Kale dead? Because he's weak, cursed. She says the kingdom needs a strong heir, not... They glanced at the white cub. Not whatever he is now. She's been gathering support among the nobles. Promises of power, land, influence. Half the court is with her. Half, Darian repeated, his voice deadly quiet. And the other half? Waiting to see who wins. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. She really wanted me dead, Kale said in Riven's mind, and his mental voice sounded younger than usual, smaller. Because I'm stuck like this. It's not your fault, Riven murmured. The prisoner blinked. What? I wasn't talking to you. Riven looked at Darian. What happens now? Now? Darian's smile was cold and sharp. Now we prepare for war, the political kind, which is messier and longer than the bloody kind. He pushed off the wall, approaching the prisoner. You'll testify publicly, repeat everything you told me in front of the full court. In exchange, your sentence will be exile instead of execution. And if I refuse? Then you hang tomorrow, and I'll find another way to expose Seraphine. Darian leaned down, getting eye level. Your choice. Speak and live. Stay silent and die. The prisoner's resolve crumbled. I'll speak, Good. Darian straightened. Get them out of my sight. Guards hauled the prisoner away, leaving just the three of them in the damp room. You can't just accuse Seraphine based on one testimony, Riven said. The court will call them a liar, claim they're trying to save their own skin. Smart, Darian acknowledged. You're learning, which is why we won't stop at one witness. We'll find the money trail, the co-conspirators, everything. Build a case so airtight she can't squirm free. That'll take time. Yes, time during which she'll be getting desperate. He looked at Cale. Which means more attempts on his life. More danger. I'm not afraid, Cale said firmly. She doesn't scare me. He says he's not afraid, Riven translated. He should be. Darian crouched in front of his son, and for a moment the Alpha King's mask slipped. Riven saw exhaustion underneath and something that looked like grief. I can't lose you again, not after. He stopped, jaw tight. Just be careful, both of you. Tell him I'm sorry, Cale said quietly, for being weak, for making everything harder. You're not weak, Riven said firmly, addressing both of them. You're cursed. There's a difference. Is there? Darian stood abruptly. The court doesn't see one. They see a prince who can't speak, can't shift back, can't rule. They see vulnerability. And in the frontier, vulnerability is death. Then change what they see. Darian's eyes narrowed. Explain. Riven hadn't planned the words, but they spilled out anyway, fueled by days of watching Cale be dismissed and discounted. Stop hiding him. Stop treating the curse like a shameful secret. If the court thinks he's weak, prove them wrong. Let him attend councils. Make decisions. Show them he's still the prince, still capable, just different. He can't speak, Darian said flatly. He can speak through me. I'll be his voice. Riven met the Alpha King's gaze without flinching. You appointed me his guardian. Let me guard him properly, not just from assassins, but from the court's contempt. Thorn, who'd been silent until now, made a thoughtful sound. It could work. Unconventional as hell, but it could work. Darian studied Riven for a long moment. You understand what you're proposing. You'd be speaking for the Crown Prince in official capacities. One mistake, one misrepresentation of his wishes, and you'd be tried for treason. I won't misrepresent him. You'll be under constant scrutiny, every word analyzed, every decision questioned. I'm already under constant scrutiny. I trust her, Cale said. Tell him I trust her completely. He trusts me, Riven said, softer now. Completely. Something shifted in Darian's expression. Not quite approval, but close. Fine. We'll try it, starting with tomorrow's council meeting. He headed for the door, then paused. And Riven? Don't make me regret this. I won't. After he left, Thorn lingered. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Riven admitted. Good. The best decisions usually are. He gestured toward the door. Come on. If you're going to represent the prince in council, you need to learn what the hell a council actually does. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. A circular table dominated the space, carved from a single massive oak and polished to a mirror shine. 12 chairs surrounded it, one for the Alpha King, one for the prince, and 10 for the highest-ranking nobles and military commanders. Riven stood behind Cale's chair, which had been modified with a cushion so the cub could see over the table edge. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Remember, Thorn had coached her that morning, you're not offering opinions. You're translating Cale's words exactly as he speaks them. Don't embellish, don't soften, just relay. Easy in theory, terrifying in practice. The council members filed in, Seraphine among them, her face a mask of pleasant neutrality. She didn't even glance at Riven, which somehow felt worse than open hostility. Darian entered last and took his seat. Let's begin. First order of business, reports from the eastern border. Commander Gray? A grizzled soldier stood. Rogue activity is increasing. 3 villages raided in the past month. They're getting bolder, organized. Someone's leading them. Do we have intel on who? Not yet, but the attacks follow a pattern. They're targeting resource shipments, specifically medical supplies. Cale's voice interrupted in Riven's mind. Tell them. Medical supplies and silver weapons. Riven spoke before she could second-guess herself. Prince Kyle says they're targeting medical supplies and silver weapons specifically. Every head turned toward her. How would the prince know that? Seraphine asked, her voice honey-sweet. He's been trapped in the citadel since his return. Because I was captured by them, Kale said, anger threading through his mental voice. Before the curse, I saw their stockpiles. They're preparing for something big. Because he was captured by them, Riven relayed. Before the curse took hold, he saw their stockpiles. They're preparing for something big. Commander Gray leaned forward. Your Highness, can you describe what you saw? Numbers? Location? Kale's memories flooded through the bond, images Riven hadn't seen before. A cave system lit by torches, crates stacked to the ceiling, wolves in human form arguing in harsh voices. She described it all, translating Kale's recollections with as much detail as possible. When she finished, the council chamber was silent. That's actually useful intelligence, another council member admitted reluctantly, if accurate. Why would he lie? Marcus Ashford asked from his seat near the end of the table. He's giving us tactical information. Or leading us into a trap, Seraphine countered smoothly. Forgive me, Your Highness, but we only have this Omega's word that you're actually communicating. For all we know, she's inventing everything. She knows I'm telling the truth, Kale growled. She just doesn't want anyone to listen. Prince Kale says, We heard what you claim, he says, Seraphine interrupted. But claiming and proving are different things. Darian's fingers drummed once on the table, a dangerous sign. Are you suggesting my son's guardian is lying to this council? I'm suggesting we have no way to verify her claims. Seraphine's smile never wavered. Perhaps the prince could demonstrate this alleged communication, some proof beyond the Omega's word? The challenge hung in the air. Riven's mind raced. How could they prove something invisible? The bond was real, but it existed only between her and Kale. There was no way to— Wait, Kale said suddenly. I have an idea. Ask Seraphine to think of a number between 1 and 100. Don't let her say it aloud. I'll try something. Riven frowned but relayed the request. Prince Kale suggests Lady Seraphine think of a number between 1 and 100, silently. Seraphine's eyebrow arched. How theatrical. Very well. She closed her eyes briefly, her expression smug. Riven waited, heart pounding. This was insane. Kale couldn't read minds. Could he? Their bond was strong, but it didn't work like that. It was just between them. Just 47, Kale said confidently. She's thinking 47. I can feel it, like an echo. It's faint, but it's there. 47, Riven said aloud. Seraphine's eyes snapped open, her composure cracking for just a fraction of a second. How did you— That's correct? Darian asked, voice sharp. Seraphine recovered quickly. A lucky guess. 1 in 100 chance. Then think of another number, Marcus suggested, leaning forward with interest. Let's see if luck holds twice. 82, Kale said before Seraphine even closed her eyes this time. She's angry. That makes it louder. 82! This time, Seraphine went pale. This is some kind of trick. Mind manipulation, forbidden magic. Or, Darian said quietly, dangerously, my son can actually communicate, and you've been dismissing him this entire time because it suited your agenda. He stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. I think we're done here. Commander Gray, investigate the locations Prince Kale described. If his intelligence proves accurate, and I suspect it will, we'll plan our response accordingly. The council dispersed quickly, but Seraphine lingered, her eyes locked on Riven with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, she said softly, so only Riven could hear. No, Riven agreed. I don't suppose it is. Man. The attack came 3 nights later. Riven woke to the smell of smoke and Kyle's frantic barking. She lurched out of bed, disoriented, and immediately saw the orange glow under her door. Fire. The citadel was on fire. We have to go, Kale said urgently. Now! The hallway's blocked. Window! Riven gasped, running to the shutters. She threw them open and looked down. 3 stories up, sheer stone wall, no handholds. Jumping meant death, but staying meant burning. Shift, she told herself. Shift and climb down. You can do this. But her hybrid form wasn't built for climbing. The asymmetry, the uneven weight distribution. She'd fall before making it halfway. There, Kale said, pointing with his nose toward the tower adjacent to theirs. The training hall roof. If you can jump, that's 15 feet across empty air. You're faster in hybrid form, stronger. And if I miss, you won't. The fire was getting louder, hungrier. Smoke seeped under the door, thick and choking. Riven made her decision. She shifted, faster now, after weeks of Thorn's brutal training. Her hybrid form erupted, bones rearranging, muscles bulging unevenly. She grabbed Kale in her human arm, cradling him against her chest. Hold on, she managed through her distorted jaw. Then she jumped. For one terrible moment, she was airborne, suspended over nothing with only smoke and darkness below. Her clawed arm reached desperately for the training hall roof. Her claws caught the edge, tearing into wood and slate. Her shoulder screamed in protest, nearly dislocating again, but she held on and pulled, dragging herself and Kale up and over the lip of the roof. They collapsed on the slate tiles, both breathing hard. Below them, fire consumed the west tower. Riven watched her quarters burn, flames licking out the window she'd just leaped from. That was deliberate, she said hoarsely. Someone set that fire. Seraphine. We don't know that. Yes, we do. Kale's mental voice was hard, older than his years. She tried poison. She tried assassination. Now she's trying fire. She won't stop until one of us is dead. Guards were rushing across the courtyard now, organizing water brigades. Riven spotted Darian among them, shouting orders, his face illuminated by the flames. We should get down there, Riven said, reverting to human. The cold immediately bit into her skin. She was wearing only a thin nightdress, already singed and torn. They found a servant's staircase and descended carefully. By the time they reached the courtyard, the West Tower was a total loss, but the fire had been contained before spreading to the rest of the citadel. Darian found them immediately. Are you hurt? We're fine, Riven said. We got out. How? The hallway was completely blocked. We jumped to the training hall roof. Darian stared at her. You jumped 15 feet across empty space while carrying my son. Seemed like the best option at the time. Something that might have been admiration flickered in his eyes. You're insane. She's amazing, Kale corrected. He says I'm amazing. He would. Darian's expression turned grim. This was deliberate. Arson. Thorn's already investigating, but it was Seraphine, Riven said flatly. We all know it was Seraphine. Knowing and proving are different things. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving soot streaks. But this escalates everything. She's not even trying to hide her intentions anymore. So arrest her, exile her, execute her. On what grounds? Suspicion? The prisoner's testimony isn't enough. They could be lying to save themselves. We need concrete evidence or a public confession. He looked at the burning tower. Neither of which we have. Then what do we do? Darian's jaw set. We force her hand, make her move openly, where everyone can see. He turned to face Riven fully. There's a tradition in the frontier. When an alpha's authority is questioned, they can call for a challenge, combat, winner takes all. Riven's stomach dropped. You want to fight Seraphine? No, I want you to fight her. The courtyard spun. What? She's questioning Kale's worth, your ability to protect him, so prove her wrong. Issue a formal challenge, Guardian versus Challenger. If you win, she has to publicly acknowledge Kale's legitimacy and your position. If you lose, I die, and she gets what she wants. Yes. Don't do it, Kale said immediately. It's too dangerous. She's trained, experienced. She's also arrogant, Riven said slowly, the pieces clicking together. She thinks I'm weak, broken. She'll accept because she thinks it's an easy win. Exactly, Darian confirmed. And when you defeat her, if I defeat her, when? He repeated with absolute certainty. When you defeat her, it proves everything. That you're capable. That Kale's curse doesn't make him weak. That the old ways of measuring strength are outdated. Riven looked at Kale, who stared back with terrified eyes. Please don't, he whispered. I can't lose you too. You won't lose me. Riven knelt, bringing herself eye level with the cub. I beat 2 rogues while dying. I survived impossible odds. I jumped across 15 feet of empty air tonight because you needed me to. She smiled, though it felt shaky. I can beat one arrogant noble. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She stood, facing Darian. When? Tomorrow, noon, the arena. Public attendance mandatory. His expression was unreadable. Thorn will train you tonight. Every minute counts. 1 night to prepare for a fight to the death. Great. You've had worse odds. He wasn't wrong. Thorn's version of preparation was systematic brutality. They spent the night in the training yard, working through scenarios. Seraphine's fighting style, aggressive, precise, relying on full wolf form and superior strength. Riven's advantages, unpredictability, her hybrid form's unique capabilities, sheer stubborn refusal to die. She'll go for your throat, Thorn said, circling Riven in the torchlight. Classic kill shot. You're shorter in hybrid form, so use that. Get under her guard. And then? Then you tear something important off. Helpful. They drilled until Riven's muscles screamed and her hybrid form felt almost natural, the transformation coming faster and holding longer. By the time dawn broke, she could shift in under 3 seconds and maintain the form for nearly 10 minutes. It'll have to be enough, Thorn said, examining her critically. You're not going to overpower her. You have to outthink her. Story of my life, he cracked a rare smile. Then you should be good at it by now. The arena filled quickly. It was an ancient structure carved into the mountainside, circular, open to the sky, with stone benches rising in tiers around a sand-covered floor. Riven had never seen it this full. Thousands of wolves, human and shifted, crowded every available space. They'd come to watch the broken Omega die. Riven stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena, listening to the crowd roar above. Her hand shook. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing them steady. Kale pressed against her legs, silent for once. I'll be fine, Riven said, not sure who she was trying to convince. You'll be amazing, Kale corrected, but his voice wavered. And when you win, I'm going to bite Seraphine's ankle. Just once for being terrible. Despite everything, Riven laughed. Deal. The door opened. Darian entered, wearing full ceremonial armor, black plate with silver wolves etched into the breastplate. He looked every inch the Alpha King. It's time, he said. Riven stood. Any last-minute advice? Don't die. It would be inconvenient. His expression softened slightly. And for what it's worth, I believe you can do this. Why? Because you're too stubborn to lose. He stepped aside, gesturing to the tunnel leading up to the arena floor. Besides, you saved my son when you had every reason not to. That kind of person doesn't lose to someone like Seraphine. The words settled something in Riven's chest. She nodded once, then walked into the tunnel. The roar of the crowd hit her like a physical force as she emerged into sunlight. 10,000 voices, all focused on her. The weak Omega, the broken guardian, the girl who didn't belong. Across the arena, Seraphine emerged from the opposite tunnel. She wore armor too, lighter than Darian's, designed for speed. Her copper hair was pulled back, and her smile was sharp and confident. Darian's voice boomed across the arena, magically amplified. We are gathered to witness a challenge. Guardian Riven Hale has been accused of incompetence, of being unfit to protect the Crown Prince. Lady Seraphine Blackwood has offered to prove this claim through combat. He paused. This is a fight to submission or death. There are no rules beyond survival. Do you both accept these terms? I accept, Seraphine called out, her voice carrying easily. Riven's throat was dry. I accept. Then begin. Seraphine shifted immediately. Her transformation was flawless. Smooth, fast, controlled. One moment a woman, the next a massive red wolf with amber eyes and fangs like daggers. She was beautiful and terrifying. Everything Riven wasn't. The crowd held its breath. Riven reached for her shift and felt nothing. Panic spiked through her. No, not now, not here. She'd done this 100 times last night. Why wasn't it? Seraphine lunged. Riven dove sideways on pure instinct. Fangs snapped shut inches from where her throat had been. She hit the sand hard, rolled, came up gasping. The wolf circled, patient now, toying with her prey. Breathe, Kale's voice cut through the panic. You're afraid. That's blocking it. Breathe and trust yourself. Riven forced air into her lungs, forced herself to remember why she was here. Not for glory, not for the court's approval, for Kale, for the cub who'd chosen to trust her when no one else would. She reached for her shift again, and this time it came. The transformation ripped through her, violent and graceless. Bones cracked, reformed, fur sprouted in patches. Her hybrid form erupted, hunched and asymmetrical and absolutely furious. The crowd gasped. Seraphine's wolf form froze, staring at the thing Riven had become. Yeah? Riven growled through her distorted jaw. I'm a monster. Let's see if that scares you. She attacked. Her hybrid form moved differently than a full wolf, more upright, capable of using her human arm for balance while her clawed forelegs slashed. She caught Seraphine across the shoulder, claws tearing through fur and flesh. The wolf yelped and retaliated, jaws closing on Riven's malformed leg. Pain exploded, white-hot and blinding. Riven didn't pull away. Instead, she used the grip, wrapped her human arm around Seraphine's neck, and squeezed. They went down together, rolling across the sand in a tangle of claws and teeth and blood. The crowd was screaming, but Riven couldn't hear them over the rushing in her ears. Seraphine was stronger, faster, better trained, but Riven was meaner. She got her clawed hand under the wolf's jaw, pushing up and back, forcing Seraphine's head away from her vulnerable throat. Her leg was shredded, blood pooling in the sand beneath them, but she held on. Her left side, Kale's voice cut through the chaos. She's favoring her right. Old injury. Hit her left shoulder. Riven twisted, bringing her clawed arm around in a vicious arc. Her talons found the junction of Seraphine's left shoulder and ribcage punched through. The wolf howled and released her leg. They separated, both bleeding, both panting. Seraphine's perfect wolf form was marred now, blood matting her red fur. Riven's hybrid shape was barely holding together, muscles spasming with the effort of maintaining it. Submit, Riven managed to say. You're hurt. This doesn't have to end in death. Seraphine shifted back to human, a tactical move using speech. Submit? She laughed, blood on her teeth. To you? A defective Omega who can't even shift properly? She spat into the sand. I'd rather die. That can be arranged, Riven said. Seraphine shifted back to wolf form and lunged again. But this time, Riven was ready. She dropped under the attack using her hybrid form's lower center of gravity. Seraphine sailed over her, and Riven's clawed hand caught the wolf's exposed belly, raking deep. Seraphine hit the sand hard, whimpering. Riven was on her immediately, her human hand fisting in the red fur, her clawed foreleg pressed against the wolf's throat. Yield, she growled. Seraphine's amber eyes blazed with hatred, but also, finally, fear. Never. Then die. Riven prepared to finish it, to end this threat permanently, and Kale's voice stopped her. Wait. What? Don't kill her. Show mercy. Show them you're better than she is. She'll just try again. You know she will. Maybe. But if you kill her, you're just proving her point, that strength is everything, that the weak don't deserve to live. His mental voice was urgent, pleading. Show them something different. Show them strength can choose mercy. Riven's clawed hand trembled against Seraphine's throat. Every instinct screamed to finish it, to eliminate the threat. But Kale was right. Slowly, Riven released her grip. She stepped back, letting Seraphine breathe. You're right, she said, loud enough for the arena to hear. I am defective. I can't shift properly. I'll never be a perfect wolf. She looked around at the thousands of watching faces. But I'm here. I survived. I saved the prince when no one else could. And I just beat one of the finest warriors this court has to offer. She turned back to Seraphine. So maybe defective isn't the same as worthless. Maybe different is just different. She let her hybrid form drop, reverting to human, standing naked and bleeding in the sand, but standing. The arena was silent. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Marcus Ashford, she realized. The useless third son. Others joined. Slowly at first, then faster, until the sound built into a roar. Not everyone clapped. Some nobles sat silent, their faces tight with disapproval. But enough, just barely enough, showed their approval. Darian descended into the arena, Kael at his heels. The prince ran straight to Riven, pressing against her legs. "You did it," he said, wonder in his voice. "You actually did it." "We did it," Riven corrected. Darian's expression was unreadable. "The challenge is satisfied. Lady Seraphine, you will acknowledge Guardian Riven's competence and Prince Kael's legitimacy, publicly, now." Seraphine, still in wolf form and bleeding heavily, shifted back to human. She looked like she wanted to refuse, but the crowd was watching. The whole kingdom was watching. "I acknowledge," she gritted out, "that Guardian Riven is capable." The word clearly tasted like poison. "And that Prince Kael's curse does not diminish his claim." "Good enough," Darian said. "Get her to the healers, and someone get Riven a damn cloak before she freezes." As servants rushed forward with blankets and healers with supplies, Riven felt her legs start to give out. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only pain and exhaustion. Strong hands caught her before she fell. Darian's hands, surprisingly gentle. "You gambled everything on mercy," he said quietly, so only she could hear. That was either brilliant or idiotic. "Probably both," Riven managed. "Probably." He helped her stay upright. "But it worked. You changed the conversation, made them question their assumptions." He paused. "You're going to be insufferable now, aren't you? Having proven me right about you?" Despite the pain, despite the blood loss, Riven smiled. "Absolutely." Kael pressed closer, and through their bond, Riven felt his relief, his pride, his fierce protectiveness. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not killing her, for being better." "Thank you," Riven whispered back, "for believing I could be." But even as they helped her from the arena, even as the crowd's approval washed over her, Riven couldn't shake one final image. Seraphine's eyes, burning with pure hatred as she'd been forced to acknowledge defeat. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The healers worked on Riven for 3 hours, stitching wounds and setting bones that had fractured during the fight. She refused sedation, partly because she didn't trust being unconscious in the Citadel, mostly because Kael wouldn't leave her side, and she could feel his anxiety through their bond like a constant hum. "You should rest," the head healer said, wrapping clean bandages around her shredded leg. "That transformation did additional damage. Your body needs time to recover." "How much time?" "A week, minimum. No training, no shifting, and absolutely no combat." Riven laughed, the sound bitter. "Sure, I'll just tell the next assassin to come back later." The healer didn't smile. "I'm serious. Push yourself too hard and you'll cause permanent damage. Your hybrid form already puts incredible strain on your body. It's not meant to hold that shape for extended periods." "Nothing about me is meant to do what it does," Riven said. "I'll be fine." But when she tried to stand, her leg buckled immediately. She would have hit the floor if Thorn hadn't caught her. "Stubborn doesn't mean invincible," he said gruffly, helping her back onto the bed. "Listen to the healer." "He's right," Kael added. "You're hurt. Really hurt." "I've been hurt before. Not like this. I can feel it through our bond. You're in more pain than you're showing." Riven looked down at the white cub, at his amber eyes that saw too much. "I'll rest. Tomorrow. After the council meeting." "There's no council meeting scheduled," Thorn said. "There will be." Riven met his gaze. "Seraphine's allies won't accept what happened. They'll push back, try to undermine it. We need to move first." Thorn studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll inform the Alpha King." After he left, Riven sagged against the pillows. Every muscle ached. Her leg throbbed in time with her heartbeat, but underneath the pain something else stirred. Victory. She'd won. Against impossible odds, against a trained warrior, she'd actually won. "You were incredible," Kael said, curling up beside her on the bed. "The way you moved, the way you fought. Nobody expected that. Nobody expected me to survive, period." "Their mistake." He pressed closer. "But I knew. I always knew you were stronger than they thought." "How?" "Because you saved me when you didn't have to. That's the strongest thing anyone can do. choosing someone else's life over your own safety. His mental voice grew quieter. My father does that for the kingdom. Commander Thorne does it for his soldiers. But you did it for a stranger. For me, when I was just an injured cub in a trap. Riven's throat tightened. She'd never thought of it that way, as strength rather than foolishness. You weren't just a stranger, she said softly. You needed help. That was enough. That's what I mean. You don't calculate worth before deciding to care. You just care. He sighed, a very human sound from a very wolf-shaped body. I wish I could tell my father that. Tell him you're not just a good guardian, you're a good person. He knows. Does he? He sees strategy in politics. He sees you as useful, but does he see you as... A knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal Darian himself, still in his ceremonial armor, though he'd removed the crown. The healer said you're refusing bed rest, he said without preamble. I'm resting right now. For the next 10 minutes before you try to walk again. He pulled a chair over and sat heavily, exhaustion evident in the way his shoulders dropped. You won today, decisively. The court can't ignore that. Seraphine's allies will try. Of course they will. They've already started. He rubbed his face. Lord Garrett is claiming the fight was fixed. Lady Moira says you must have used forbidden magic. Councilman Thane insists your hybrid form gives you an unfair advantage and should have disqualified you. Riven's hands clenched in the sheets. So even winning isn't enough. Winning is never enough in politics. You have to win, then defend that win, then leverage it into more wins. He leaned back, studying her. But you already knew that, didn't you? That's why you spared Seraphine. Cale asked me to. Darian's eyes flicked to his son, then back to Riven. What did he say? Exactly. Riven repeated Cale's words, about mercy, about showing strength differently, about not proving Seraphine's point. When she finished, Darian was quiet for a long time. He said that, he finally said. An 8-year-old cursed prince, trapped in wolf form, came up with that strategy in the middle of a death match. Yes, he's smarter than I gave him credit for. The admission seemed to cost him something. Before the curse, Cale was a child. Sweet, eager to please, but not particularly strategic. I thought he'd need years more training before understanding court politics. He looked at his son. But the curse changed him, made him observe more, understand more. He's been learning from silence. Tell him I'm sorry, Cale said quietly. Sorry I'm not the son he remembers. He says, I heard him. Darian stood abruptly, moving to the window. His back was rigid. Not heard exactly, but I felt something. Through the bond between father and son. He turned, and his expression was carefully controlled. Tell him he has nothing to apologize for. The son I remember was a child. The son I have now is becoming something more. Really? Cale's mental voice was small, hopeful. He means it, Riven said, because she could see it in Darian's eyes. Pride mixed with grief, mixed with something that looked like wonder. Tomorrow, Darian said, shifting back to business, we're calling an emergency council. You'll present the intelligence Kael provided about the rogue camps. If it proves accurate, it will be, Riven interrupted. He's not lying. I know. But the council needs proof. Commander Gray is sending scouts tonight. If they confirm the locations, the stockpiles, everything Kael described, he paused, then we move against the rogues, decisively, and Kael gets credit for providing the intelligence that saved lives. You're using him, Riven said flatly. I'm letting him contribute. There's a difference. Darian's jaw set. He's the crown prince. Cursed or not, he needs to prove his worth to the kingdom. This is how. It's okay, Kael said before Riven could argue. I want to help. I want to show them I'm not useless. You're not useless, Riven and Darian said simultaneously. They looked at each other, surprised. Well, Darian said after a moment, at least we agree on something. Despite everything, Riven almost smiled. Commander Gray's scouts returned at dawn with exactly the confirmation Darian needed. The cave system existed. The stockpiles were real. Medical supplies, silver weapons, enough to equip a small army. Everything Cale had described matched perfectly. The emergency council convened at mid-morning, and the chamber was packed. Not just the regular council members, but dozens of nobles who demanded to attend, all of them eager to see what happened next. Riven stood behind Cale's chair again, her leg barely supporting her weight despite the healer's best efforts. She'd wrapped it tightly and taken enough willow bark tea to dull the worst of the pain, but every step was agony. "You should be resting," Cale said for the 100th time. "I'll rest when this is over." Darian called the meeting to order with his usual efficiency. "Commander Gray, your report." The grizzled soldier stood, unfurling a map across the table. "The prince's intelligence was accurate. We found the cave system here," he pointed, "exactly where described. 3 main chambers, multiple exits, defensible position. The rogues have been using it for months, maybe years." Murmurs rippled through the council. "The stockpiles?" Seraphine asked. She sat at the far end of the table, her shoulder heavily bandaged, her face pale but composed. "Medical supplies, silver weapons, dried food, winter gear. Enough to sustain roughly 200 wolves through a prolonged campaign." Gray's expression was grim. "They're preparing for war." "Against us," Lord Garrett said, his jowls quivering with indignation. "Against the crown." "Against the entire frontier," Darian corrected. "This isn't just about the kingdom. These rogues are organized, well-supplied, and clearly have external backing. Someone's funding this operation." "Do we know who?" "Not yet, but we will." Darian's gaze swept the table. "The question now is, how do we respond?" "Destroy them," Seraphine said immediately. "Send the full military force. Eliminate the threat." "That's what they're expecting," Marcus Ashford interjected. "If they're smart enough to build these stockpiles, they're smart enough to have contingency plans. We attack head-on, we'll walk into traps." "Then what do you suggest?" Seraphine's tone was ice. "We wait for them to attack us?" "No," Cale's voice said in Riven's mind. "We use their own strategy against them. They're stockpiling because they need supplies, so we cut off their supply lines." Riven spoke before she could second-guess herself. "Prince Cale suggests we cut off their supply lines instead of attacking directly." Every head turned toward her. "Explain," Darian said. "They're getting supplies from somewhere," Cale continued. "Traders, corrupt officials, someone. Find the source, cut it off, and they're forced to either attack before they're ready or abandon the position." Riven relayed it word for word. Commander Gray leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. "That could work. Force them to move on our timeline instead of theirs." "It's a delay tactic," Lord Garrett protested, "not a solution." "It's a smart tactic," Marcus countered. "Buy time to investigate their backers, identify weak points, build alliances. Fighting isn't always about direct confrontation." The debate intensified, voices rising as council members argued strategy and risk assessment. But Riven noticed something. They were listening to Cale's suggestion, actually considering it, weighing its merits against other options. They were taking him seriously. Darian let the discussion run for several minutes, then raised a hand for silence. "We'll implement a 2-pronged approach. Commander Gray, you'll investigate supply lines and identify their sources. Meanwhile, we increase patrols along the border and fortify our own supply chains. If they attack before we're ready, we hold defensive positions." He looked around the table. "Any objections?" Seraphine's jaw was tight, but she stayed silent. "Then it's decided." Darian stood. "Council dismissed. Commander Gray, coordinate with—" Light exploded through the chamber. Riven stumbled back, throwing up her arm to shield her eyes from the sudden brilliance. It was coming from Cale, white light pouring from the cub's small body like he was made of pure radiance. "What's happening?" Cale's voice was panicked. "I can't. It hurts. Cale!" Darian was at his son's side instantly, but the light was too bright to approach. "What's wrong?" "I don't know." Riven tried to move closer, but her injured leg gave out. She hit the floor hard, pain shooting through her body. The light intensified, pulsing in waves. The chamber filled with the smell of ozone and something else, something ancient and powerful, like lightning and winter wind. Then Cale started changing. His small wolf body stretched, elongated. Fur receded in some places, shifted in others. Bones cracked and reformed. not into the hybrid monstrosity Riven carried, but into something clean and deliberate. The light peaked, blinding, and collapsed inward. When Riven's vision cleared, a boy knelt in the center of the chamber. He looked maybe 8 years old, with white blonde hair that fell to his shoulders and amber eyes that held ancient wisdom. He was thin, pale, dressed in the remnants of clothes that had somehow survived the transformation. His hands, human hands, trembled as he stared at them in wonder. His voice cracked, unused. He tried again. I'm me. I'm human. Darian caught him as he collapsed, holding his son for the first time in months. The council chamber erupted. Nobles were on their feet, shouting questions and theories and demands for explanation. But Riven barely heard them. She was too focused on the bond, on the familiar presence that still hummed in her mind. I can still hear you, Kale said, his mental voice awed. Even like this. Even human. How? Riven asked aloud. Kale looked at her over his father's shoulder, and his eyes were bright with tears. I don't know, but I'm free. The curse is broken. How? Darian repeated, his voice rough with emotion he wasn't bothering to hide. What broke it? I think... Kale hesitated, then looked at Riven again. In the arena. When you chose mercy. When you proved that strength didn't have to mean violence. He touched his chest. Something inside me shifted. Understood something I hadn't before. And then just now, during the council, when everyone was actually listening to my ideas, treating me like I mattered. You've always mattered, Darian said fiercely. But I believed it. For the first time, I believed I was worth listening to, that I could contribute. Kale's voice strengthened. And the curse, it just let go. The healer rushed forward, already examining Kale for injuries or lingering curse effects. But Riven stayed on the floor, overwhelmed. She'd done that. Her choice in the arena, her decision to show mercy instead of taking the kill, it had broken a curse that magic and healers and ancient rituals couldn't touch. Impossible, Seraphine whispered, and for the first time she sounded afraid. Curses don't break like that. They require sacrifice, ritual, specific conditions. Apparently not this one, Marcus said, grinning like he'd just won a bet. Maybe the condition was simpler than we thought. Maybe it just required someone to believe the prince was worth saving. That's not how magic works. Maybe it's how this magic worked. Seraphine's face went through several expressions before settling on something between fury and disbelief. She looked at Riven, still on the floor, and something cracked in her composure. This is your fault, she hissed. You and your defective form, your broken transformation, your stubborn refusal to know your place. You've corrupted everything, made the court question traditions that have stood for centuries, and now you've somehow broken a curse that should have been permanent. Her hands clenched. Your chaos, your disorder, The reason my son is human again, Darian interrupted, his voice cold enough to freeze blood, which makes her considerably more valuable than you, Lady Blackwood. Remember that. The threat was unmistakable. Seraphine stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. This council has become a farce. I'm leaving. You're dismissed, Darian corrected. All of you. We'll reconvene tomorrow. For now. He looked at his son, and his expression softened impossibly. I need time with my family. The council filed out quickly, some shooting curious glances back at Kale, others whispering frantically to each other. Marcus helped Riven to her feet before leaving, squeezing her shoulder once in silent congratulation. When the chamber was finally empty except for Darian, Kale, and Riven, an awkward silence fell. Kale was the one to break it. Father, Don't! Darian pulled his son into a fierce embrace. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just... His voice cracked. Just let me hold you. My boy. My son. Kale wrapped thin arms around his father's neck and cried, huge gulping sobs that spoke of months of isolation and fear and desperate hope. Riven tried to slip away to give them privacy, but Kale's voice stopped her. Stay. Please. He pulled back from Darian, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. You're part of this. Part of us. I'm just the guardian. You're more than that, Kale said firmly. You're my friend. My first real friend. He looked at Darian. Tell her. Tell her she's not just an employee. Darian studied Riven for a long moment. You've protected my son, fought for him, changed your entire life for him. You showed him mercy when the world showed him none, and somehow he gestured helplessly at Kale's human form. Somehow that broke a curse powerful enough to trap a prince for months. I didn't do anything special, Riven protested. You just chose kindness when everyone else chose judgment. You chose to believe in someone the world had written off. Darian's expression was unreadable. That's not nothing. That's everything. The words settled around Riven like a cloak, warm and unexpected. I need to assign you new quarters, Darian continued, shifting back to practical matters. Your old rooms are destroyed, and given Kale's transformation, the situation has changed. She stays with me, Kale interrupted, in the prince's quarters. There's room, and He looked down, suddenly shy. I don't want her far away. The bond is still there. I can still hear her thoughts sometimes. I think we're connected now, permanently. Darian's eyebrows rose. That's highly unusual. Everything about this situation is unusual, Riven pointed out. Fair enough, he sighed. Fine. You'll move to the prince's wing, but Riven, his expression turned serious. This changes things. Kale's human now. He'll need different protection, different training. The role of guardian becomes more complex. I understand. Do you? He stepped closer. Because the court just watched you break a curse through sheer stubborn compassion. They watched you defeat one of their finest warriors. They listened to your translations of Kale's strategy and saw it was sound. He paused. You're not the broken Omega they dismissed anymore. You're becoming something else, something they don't have a category for. Is that a problem? For them? Absolutely. For me? A slight smile. We'll see. The prince's quarters made Riven's old rooms look like a servant's closet. 3 connected chambers, bedroom, study, and a sitting room with a fireplace large enough to roast a whole deer. The furniture was carved from dark wood, elegant but functional. Windows overlooked the training grounds on one side and the mountains on the other. This is too much, Riven said, limping into the sitting room. This is standard for the crown prince, a servant corrected, setting down fresh linens. Your room is through there. She pointed to a door Riven hadn't noticed, adjoining His Highness's bedroom, for easy access in emergencies. The servant left, and Kale immediately collapsed onto the sofa with a groan. Everything hurts, he said. Is this normal? Being human? You've been human before. Not for months. I forgot how much joints ache and how weird it is to have fingers. He flexed his hands experimentally. And I'm hungry, constantly. Is that normal? For an 8-year-old who just broke a curse? Probably. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, exhaustion settling over both of them. Riven's leg throbbed, her ribs ached, every muscle in her body screamed for rest, but underneath it all she felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Riven? Kale's voice was quiet. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did you really save me? That day in the snow? He sat up, looking at her seriously. You didn't know I was the prince. You thought I was just a random cub, so why risk your life? Riven thought about lying, about giving some noble answer about duty or compassion, but Kale deserved the truth. Because I knew what it felt like, she said finally, to be alone and hurt and have everyone walk past like you don't matter. My whole life, people looked at me and saw something broken, something not worth saving. She met his eyes. I couldn't do that to you. Couldn't leave you in that trap and become the same thing I hated in everyone else. Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and hugged her, awkward and fierce, his thin arms surprisingly strong. Thank you, he whispered, for not walking past. Riven hugged him back, careful of her injuries, and felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, opening, like a door she'd kept locked for 17 years finally swinging wide. You're welcome, she said. A knock on the door interrupted them. Thorn entered without waiting for permission, carrying a wooden box. Brought you something, he said gruffly, setting the box on the table, since you destroyed your clothes in the arena. Riven opened it to find combat leathers, similar to the ones she'd borrowed for training, but these were new, custom fitted, and on the chest, stitched in silver thread, was a wolf's head. The royal crest. These are official guardian uniforms, Thorne said. You earned them. Wear them proudly. He paused. And there's something else. The Alpha King wants to formalize your position, not just as Kale's guardian, but as something more. More how? That's what he wants to discuss. Tomorrow, after you've rested. Thorne's scarred face softened slightly. You did good, Riven. In the arena, in the council, all of it. You proved you belong here. After he left, Riven held the uniform, tracing the silver stitching with one finger. She belonged here. The words should have felt foreign, impossible, but somehow they fit. Sleep came hard that night. Every time Riven closed her eyes, she saw the arena, Seraphine's wolf form lunging, blood on sand, the moment she'd chosen mercy over violence. Her leg throbbed in time with her heartbeat, a constant reminder of how close she'd come to losing. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in Kale's room, then a soft knock on the adjoining door. Can't sleep either? Kale asked when she opened it. Not really. Me neither. Everything's too quiet. When I was a wolf, I could hear everything, heartbeats, breathing, mice in the walls. Now it's just, he gestured helplessly. Normal. Boring. You'll adjust. Will I? He sat on the edge of her bed, swinging his legs. What if I don't remember how to be human? What if I'm broken now, just differently? Then you'll be broken with me, Riven said, and we'll figure it out together. Kale smiled, but it faded quickly. Seraphine's going to try again, to hurt us. I saw her face when the curse broke. She looked terrified. Yeah, but scared people are dangerous people. He picked at the blanket. My father wants to exile her, send her to the Eastern Territories. But I don't think that'll be enough. What do you think we should do? I don't know. That's the problem. Before the curse, I would have said exile was too harsh. Now I think it might not be harsh enough. He looked up and his amber eyes were far too old. The curse changed me, made me see things differently. Is that good or bad? Neither. It's just true. Riven sat beside him. You grew up faster than you should have. That's not your fault. But I can't go back. Can't unknow what I learned. No, but you can choose what to do with it. They sat together in the darkness, two broken things that had somehow found each other in a world that wanted them dead. Eventually, Kale fell asleep against her shoulder. Riven carried him back to his own bed, tucked him in the way she imagined mothers did, and returned to her room. This time, sleep came easier. And when morning arrived with pale winter light streaming through the windows, Riven woke to find Kale standing in the doorway, fully dressed in prince's clothes, looking nervous and determined. My father wants to see us, he said. Both of us. He says it's important. They found Darian in his private study surrounded by maps and reports. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were sharp. Sit, he said, gesturing to chairs across from his desk. They sat. Darian studied them for a long moment, then pushed a document across the desk toward Riven. Read this. It was an official decree, written in formal language she had to parse twice to understand. But the essence was clear. Riven Hale was being elevated from guardian to royal advisor. Her council would carry weight in council meetings. Her position would be permanent, protected by royal decree. I don't understand, Riven said. Why? Because you broke a curse that shouldn't have been breakable. Because you defeated a superior opponent through unconventional means. Because my son trusts you absolutely, and that's worth more than any title. Darian leaned back. But mostly because the kingdom needs what you represent. Which is? Change, evolution. The idea that strength comes in forms we haven't recognized before. He gestured at the maps. The frontier is changing. The rogues are organizing. External forces are pushing at our borders. The old ways, the old hierarchies, they're not enough anymore. We need people who think differently, who see solutions others miss. You want me because I'm broken. I want you because you're not broken. You're adapted. There's a difference. He stood, moving to the window. The court will resist. Seraphine's allies will call this favoritism, corruption, rewarding incompetence. But I'm betting, he turned back, that enough people watched you in that arena and started questioning their assumptions, started wondering if maybe we've been measuring strength wrong all along. Kale reached over and grabbed Riven's hand. Say yes, please. Riven looked at the decree, at the official seals and formal language. A week ago, she'd been a discarded Omega bleeding in the snow. Now she was being offered a position of actual power. It was insane. It was terrifying. It was everything she'd never dared to want. Yes, she said. I accept. Darian smiled, genuinely smiled, not the political mask he usually wore. Good. Then we have work to do. He pulled out another map, this one marked with red ink. Commander Gray's scouts have identified 3 major supply routes feeding the rogue camps. We're going to cut them off. All of them. Simultaneously. That'll force them to move, Kale said, leaning forward to study the map. Exactly. And when they move, we'll be waiting. Darian's finger traced a path through the mountains. But we need intelligence. Someone who can infiltrate, observe, report back without being detected. Someone expendable, Riven said flatly. Someone unexpected, Darian corrected. Someone they'd never suspect because she's supposed to be recovering from injuries. Someone who can shift into a form that doesn't match any known pack signature. Oh, you want me to spy on the rogues? I want you to gather intelligence that could save hundreds of lives. Yes. He met her eyes. But I won't order you. This is too dangerous. If they catch you, they'll kill me, Riven finished. I'm aware. Don't, Kale said urgently through their bond. It's too risky. You just fought in the arena. You're hurt. Which is exactly why they won't expect it, Riven said aloud. Everyone thinks I'm weak, recovering. That gives me cover. You're insane, Kale said. Probably. She looked at Darian. When do I leave? Tomorrow night. Thorn will brief you on what to look for, how to report back. You'll have 3 days. 2, Riven interrupted. My hybrid form won't hold longer than that without proper rest. And if I'm caught mid-transformation, 2 days then. Darian's expression was carefully neutral. Riven, you don't have to do this. You've already proven yourself a dozen times over. I know, but those rogues want Kale dead, want all of us dead, and I'm not letting that happen. She stood, ignoring the protests from her injured leg, and extended her hand across the desk. Darian shook it, his grip firm and warm. Don't die, he said. That's an order. I'll do my best. As they left the study, Kale grabbed Riven's arm, pulling her into a side corridor. This is crazy, he said. You just broke my curse. You just became a royal advisor. You should be celebrating, not running off to spy on murderous rogues. The timing's not ideal, Riven admitted. That's an understatement. He crossed his arms, looking so much like his father, it was almost funny. I forbid it, as the crown prince. You can't forbid me from doing my job. I can as your friend. The word hung between them. Friend. Such a simple thing, but Riven had never had one before. Friends trust each other, she said gently. Trust me to do this and come back. Kale's jaw worked. And if you don't come back, then you'll be the prince who broke his curse and changed the kingdom. You'll be fine. I won't be. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. I need you. Don't you understand that? You're not just my guardian or my advisor. You're the person who sees me as more than a title or a curse or a political asset. You're my Riven. The words hit her square in the chest, unexpected and overwhelming. I'll come back, she promised. I swear it. You better. He hugged her fiercely. Because if you die, I'm going to be really mad at you. Despite everything, Riven laughed. Noted. That night, while Kale slept and the citadel settled into quiet darkness, Riven stood at her window and looked out over the frontier. Somewhere in those frozen mountains, rogues were preparing for war. Somewhere out there, enemies were gathering, and in 2 days she'd be walking right into their midst. The smart thing would be to refuse, to stay safe behind stone walls and let soldiers handle it. But Riven had never been particularly smart. She'd been foolish enough to save a dying cub, foolish enough to fight in an arena while broken, foolish enough to believe she could make a difference, and so far, foolishly, impossibly, it had worked. The rogue camp sat in a canyon carved from ancient ice and stone, hidden so well that Riven nearly missed it even with Kale's detailed directions burned into her memory. She She crouched on a ridge overlooking the settlement, her hybrid form making her nearly invisible against the shadowed rocks. Just another broken shape in a landscape full of them. 2 days. She had 2 days to gather intelligence and get out. The camp was bigger than she'd expected. Not the 100 rogues Commander Gray had estimated, but easily 300, maybe more. They moved with military precision, organized patrols, designated supply areas, a command structure that spoke of professional training rather than desperate outcasts. This isn't random, Riven thought, wishing she could communicate with Kyle across the distance. This is an army. She spent the first day observing, memorizing patrol patterns, and counting supplies. The stockpiles were exactly where Kale had described, but they'd grown. Fresh crates arrived every few hours, carried by wolves who wore merchant clothes but moved like soldiers. As night fell, Riven crept closer, using her hybrid form's strange advantages, the ability to move on 2 legs or 4, to think strategically while maintaining animal senses. She reached the main cave's entrance just as voices echoed from within. Confirmation from the capital. The prince broke his curse. Riven froze. That's impossible, a second voice said, deeper, commanding. The curse was blood magic, old magic. It doesn't just break. Nevertheless, it happened, during a council meeting, apparently. Witnesses say he transformed in front of everyone. A pause. This changes our timeline. How much time do we have? 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we're lucky. The Alpha King will move against us once he secures the border. Then we move first. Riven's blood went cold. She needed to hear more, needed to know their exact plans. A hand clamped over her mouth from behind. She reacted instantly, twisting and slashing with her clawed arm, but her attacker was ready, dodging and locking her in a hold that immobilized her hybrid form's asymmetrical leverage points. Quiet, a familiar voice hissed. Unless you want the whole camp down on us. Riven went still. She knew that voice. The hand released her mouth, and she turned to find Marcus Ashford crouched behind her, dressed in dark clothes and looking far less useless than his court persona suggested. What the hell are you doing here? She whispered. Spying, same as you. He gestured for her to follow, moving away from the cave entrance with practiced silence. They climbed to a higher position, wedging themselves into a crevice that offered concealment. The Alpha King sent you too? Riven asked. The Alpha King doesn't know I'm here. Neither does anyone except my father, who's been funding reconnaissance operations for months. Marcus's easy smile was gone, replaced by hard competence. Did you think we were all just decorative nobles playing politics? Yes, actually. Good. That's exactly what we want people to think. He pulled out a small leather journal, flipping to a marked page. I've been tracking supply shipments for 6 weeks. The rogues are being funded by someone in the capital, someone with access to military resources and enough gold to equip an army. Who? That's what I'm trying to figure out, but whoever it is, they want the Alpha King dead and the kingdom destabilized. He glanced back at the camp. What did you hear in the cave? Riven relayed the conversation, the timeline, the plan to move first, everything. Marcus's expression darkened. 2 weeks. That's not enough time to fortify defenses or rally allies. He scribbled notes. We need to get this information back to the Citadel. Tonight. I'm not done gathering intelligence. You're done if you're dead, and you will be if they find you. He closed the journal. These aren't desperate rogues anymore. They're organized, disciplined, and clearly being led by someone with military training. Look. He pointed to a section of the camp where wolves were drilling in formation, moving through combat exercises with synchronized precision. That's not self-taught, Marcus said. That's professional instruction, which means whoever's funding this operation also provided trainers. He looked at Riven. We're not dealing with a rogue problem, we're dealing with a coup. The word hung between them, heavy and terrifying. We need to leave, Marcus said again. Now, while a horn blast cut through the night, they both froze. Intruder alert, Marcus breathed. They know someone's here. They don't know who or where, Riven said, mind racing. We can still. Torches flared to life throughout the camp. Wolves shifted, taking full animal form, and began spreading out in organized search patterns. We're not getting out undetected, Marcus said. He pulled a knife from his boot, checked its edge. So we go loud, 'cause chaos. Scatter them, run like hell. That's your plan? You have a better one? Riven looked at the camp, 300 trained rogues, all of them now searching for intruders. Her hybrid form was strong, but not invincible. Marcus was clearly skilled, but still just one person. They were outmatched, outnumbered, and trapped. Yeah, Riven said slowly, an idea forming. I do, but you're going to hate it. Tershit. 10 minutes later, Riven stood at the edge of the canyon, her hybrid form fully manifested, holding Marcus's unconscious body in her clawed arm. The rogues had found her quickly, exactly as planned. Now she faced their leader, a massive gray wolf, who'd shifted to human form to speak with her. Well, the leader said, circling her slowly. What do we have here? He was older, maybe 50, with scars crossing his bare chest and eyes that held cold intelligence. A broken Omega and an unconscious noble, quite the pair. I was told you pay for information, Riven said, her voice distorted by her malformed jaw. I have information worth gold. The leader's eyebrows rose. Do you now? The Alpha King is planning to move against you. 2 days from now, full military assault on this position. She dropped Marcus onto the ground with calculated roughness. This one heard the plans in council, tried to run, tell someone. I stopped him. And why would you do that? Because I'm tired of being treated like garbage, tired of being the broken thing they mock and dismiss. Riven let bitterness seep into her voice. It wasn't hard, pulling from 17 years of actual experience. They made me the prince's guardian, but it's just for show. A joke. The defective Omega playing at importance. The leader studied her, and Riven could see him calculating, analyzing. So you betrayed your king for gold, he said slowly. I'm betraying people who never valued me for a chance at something better. She gestured at the camp. You're building an army. You need fighters. I can fight. You can ask the noble when he wakes up how well I fight. Oh, I will. The leader smiled, and it wasn't kind. But first, prove you're telling the truth. Tell me about these attack plans. This was the gamble. If Riven gave them false information that was too obviously false, they'd kill her immediately. If she gave them accurate information, she'd be committing actual treason. But if she gave them information that was just plausible enough while still being strategically useless. Three-pronged assault, Riven said. Main force from the north, cutting off your supply routes. Secondary force from the east, blocking retreat paths. Third force holds position south, preventing reinforcements. It was exactly what Darien would do. Textbook military strategy. It was also exactly what the rogues would expect and could easily counter. The leader's eyes narrowed. When? 2 days. Dawn attack. And you're telling us this because? Because if you crush the Alpha King's forces, you'll need people to hold territory. Organize the aftermath. I can do that. Better than rotting in the citadel being called a monster. For a long, terrible moment, the leader said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. We'll see. Lock her in the holding cave with the noble. If the attack comes as she described, she's proven herself. If not, he smiled coldly. We'll have some entertainment before we kill her. Guards dragged Riven and Marcus away. The holding cave was exactly that, a small chamber with a single entrance, guarded by 2 massive wolves in shifted form. They threw Riven inside first, then Marcus. The moment the guards left, Marcus's eyes snapped open. Did it work? He whispered. We're alive and they bought it. For now. Riven let her hybrid form drop, reverting to human with the usual painful rush. But we've got maybe 6 hours before they realize the attack isn't coming and figure out we lied. 6 hours to escape a guarded cave, get past 300 trained rogues, and cross 50 miles of frozen wilderness. Marcus sat up, checking himself for injuries from the staged capture. I've had worse odds. Barely. We're not escaping. He stared at her. What? We're not leaving empty-handed. I didn't come here just to confirm they exist. I came to find out who's funding them. Riven moved to the cave entrance, peering out at the guards. And I think I know how to find out. She pointed to a larger cave across the camp, the one where she'd overheard the conversation earlier. Their command center. That's where they'll have records, correspondence, anything linking them to their backer. Even if we could reach it, which we can't, by the way, we'd never get past the security. Not as humans, but as prisoners trying to escape, making noise, causing chaos? Riven's mind was racing now, pieces clicking together. They'd focus on stopping us, securing the perimeter, pull guards away from the command center, for maybe 30 seconds before they kill us. 30 seconds might be enough. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. You know that, right? Insane is what I do best. Despite the situation, he laughed quietly. Fair enough. So what's the plan? 20 minutes later, Riven crashed through the cave entrance in full hybrid form, roaring with everything her malformed lungs could muster. The guards reacted exactly as expected, shifting immediately, lunging to stop the escaping prisoner. Riven dodged the first guard, her asymmetrical form moving in ways they didn't anticipate. She caught the second guard with her clawed arm, not enough to kill, but enough to draw blood and screams. Chaos erupted. More guards rushed toward the commotion. Wolves howled alerts. The entire camp mobilized. And Marcus, dressed in stolen guard clothes and moving with the crowd, slipped toward the command center. Riven fought like something possessed. Not to win, she couldn't win against these numbers, but to hold attention, to be the obvious, violent threat everyone focused on. A wolf caught her from behind, jaws closing on her shoulder. She twisted, using the bite's leverage to flip them both. Another attacker came from the side. She caught them with her human arm, threw them into a third. Blood sprayed. Hers, theirs, didn't matter. The important thing was noise and chaos, and every guard in the camp focusing on stopping the escaped hybrid monstrosity. She lasted 90 seconds before they brought her down. Weight crashed onto her back, driving her into the frozen ground. Jaws found her neck, pressed but didn't bite. A warning. Claws pinned her limbs. The leader appeared, still in human form, looking more amused than angry. Well, he said, that was entertaining but stupid. Did you really think you could fight your way through 300 wolves? Riven, pinned and bleeding, managed to laugh. It came out garbled through her hybrid jaw. Didn't need to fight through, just needed to distract. The leader's amusement vanished. What? An explosion rocked the camp. Not a real explosion. Marcus had found something flammable in the command center and set it ablaze. Smoke billowed from the cave entrance, black and thick. The leader spun toward it, face going white. The documents! He ran, guards following, leaving Riven momentarily unattended. She didn't waste the opening. She shifted back to human, faster now, almost smooth with practice, and sprinted toward the canyon wall. Her injured shoulder screamed protest, but she ignored it, scrambling up the rocks with desperate speed. Behind her, wolves howled. She heard pursuit crashing through underbrush. Just a little further, she thought. She crested the ridge and found Marcus waiting, covered in soot, grinning like a maniac. Got it, he said, holding up a leather satchel. Records, correspondence, everything. You set their entire command center on fire. It seemed appropriate. He grabbed her arm. Come on. They'll be right behind us. They ran. Through frozen forest and across ice that cracked under their weight and over ridges that should have been impossible to climb. Wolves pursued. Riven could hear them, feel them getting closer. Her leg gave out first. The injury from the arena, never properly healed, finally quit. She went down hard, hitting frozen ground with enough force to knock the air from her lungs. Riven! Marcus skidded to a stop. Get up! Can't... She tried to stand, but her leg wouldn't support weight. Go, take the documents. I'll slow them down. Not happening. Marcus, I said no. He hauled her up, getting her arm around his shoulders. We're leaving together, or not at all. The wolves were close now, so close Riven could see their eyes reflecting moonlight. This was it. They'd come so far, but it wasn't enough. They were going to die here, in the frozen wilderness, and the information they'd gathered would die with them. Then a horn blast split the night. Not the rogue's horn. A different sound, deeper and more resonant. The royal hunt. Wolves poured over the ridge from the opposite direction. Darian's forces, silver weapons gleaming, moving with deadly precision. The Alpha King himself led them, already shifted into a massive black wolf form that radiated pure dominance. The rogues scattered, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. Within minutes, it was over. Darian shifted back to human, striding toward where Riven and Marcus had collapsed against a tree. His eyes swept over them. Riven's injuries, Marcus's soot-covered state, and his jaw tightened. "You were supposed to observe and report," he said, voice dangerously quiet. "Not infiltrate and commit arson." "We got carried away," Marcus said weakly. "You could have been killed, but we weren't." Riven held up the leather satchel. "And we got proof, documents, correspondence, everything showing who's funding the rogues." Darian took the satchel, opened it, and went very still as he read the first page. "What?" Riven asked. "Who is it?" "Lady Seraphine Blackwood," Darian said, his voice flat with fury, "and half a dozen other noble houses. They've been planning this for months, maybe years." He looked up, and his eyes blazed with cold rage. "A conspiracy to overthrow the crown and install Seraphine as Alpha Queen." The words hung in the frozen air. "She's still in the Citadel," Marcus said, "with her allies. If they realize we have proof, they'll move immediately, force a confrontation." Darian was already shifting back, his wolf form massive and terrible. His mental voice reached all the wolves present. Double-time march. "We return to the Citadel now." They moved fast, but Riven's injuries made her slow. Marcus helped as much as he could, but even he was flagging. "Hold on," a familiar voice said in Riven's mind. "We're coming." "Kale?" She looked up to see a white wolf, smaller than the warriors but moving with determined speed, racing toward them. Kale had followed the hunt. Against orders, against all sense, he'd followed. "You're hurt," he said, pressing against her side as she stumbled. "Let me help." "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't have gone alone." His mental voice was fierce. "We're pack. We don't leave pack behind." Together, Riven leaning on Kale's small but surprisingly strong wolf form, Marcus on her other side, they made the journey back to the Citadel. Dawn was breaking when they arrived. The throne room was packed. Every noble, every guard, every servant who could fit, all of them gathered because the Alpha King had called an emergency assembly. Riven stood beside Darian's throne, bandaged and exhausted but upright. Marcus stood with his father. The documents they'd recovered spread across a table for all to see. And Seraphine Blackwood stood in the center of the room, surrounded by guards, her face a mask of composure even as her world crumbled. "Treason," Darian said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Conspiracy to commit murder, funding hostile forces, attempting to overthrow the crown." He stood, and his presence filled the space. "Lady Seraphine Blackwood, you are accused of all these crimes. How do you answer?" Seraphine's eyes swept the crowd, calculating even now. "I answer that you have no proof. Documents can be forged, accusations can be manufactured." Her gaze landed on Riven. "This Omega has hated me from the start. Of course she'd fabricate evidence." "The documents have your seal," Marcus said, stepping forward. "Your signature. And we recovered them from the rogues' command center, the same rogues who tried to kill the prince. Coincidence? Or clever framing?" "Then explain this." Darian held up a letter, reading aloud. "The prince's curse makes him weak and unsuitable for rule. Once eliminated, the kingdom will accept new leadership. We move on the next new moon." He lowered the paper. "Dated 3 days before the assassination attempt at dinner. Your handwriting, your seal." Seraphine's composure finally cracked. "I was protecting the kingdom. That cursed boy was making us look weak, making you look weak. The frontier needs strong leadership, not some defective heir and a broken Omega playing at importance." "My son," Darian said, voice deadly quiet, "broke his curse through courage and compassion. He provided intelligence that saved lives. He's proven his worth 100 times over." He stepped down from the throne. "And the Omega you dismissed defeated you in combat and exposed your treachery. Between the 3 of you," he gestured at Seraphine and her co-conspirators, "she's shown more strength than all your noble blood combined." The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others uncertain. Seraphine's face twisted with fury. "This is madness. You're letting that creature corrupt everything we've built, everything we stand for." "What we stand for," a new voice said, "is survival, adaptation, strength in all its forms." Kale walked into the throne room, no longer in wolf form but fully human, dressed in prince's clothes and carrying himself with unexpected authority. He stopped beside Riven, looking up at his father. "I was weak," Kale said, addressing the crowd. "Cursed, trapped, unable to speak or defend myself. By every traditional measure, I should have been abandoned, left to die." He glanced at Riven. "But one person didn't abandon me. One person chose to protect me when she had every reason not to. And that choice, that kindness, broke a curse that magic couldn't touch." He turned back to face the nobles. "Riven is everything you've called her. Broken, defective, unable to shift properly. But she's also brave, loyal, and strong in ways you refuse to recognize." His young voice carried clearly. "She represents the future, not the past. And if this kingdom is going to survive what's coming, we need to choose which one we want." Silence fell across the throne room. Then, from the back, someone started clapping. A guard. Young, scarred, probably considered expendable by noble standards. But he clapped anyway. Others joined, slowly at first, then faster. Not all of them. Many nobles stood rigid and disapproving. But enough. Just barely enough. Darian looked at Riven. "What would you have me do with the traitors?" The question hung in the air. Seraphine watched Riven with barely concealed hatred. This was power, real power, the ability to choose life or death. Riven thought about mercy in the arena, about choosing something different. "Exile," she said finally. "Strip their titles, confiscate their lands, and send them to the farthest borders. Let them rebuild from nothing, the way I had to. Maybe they'll learn something." "Mercy again," Darian said. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm choosing it anyway." Seraphine laughed, bitter and broken. "You think you've won. You think you've changed anything. But you're still just a broken Omega playing dress-up in a world that will never truly accept you." "Maybe," Riven agreed. "But I'm a broken Omega who saved the prince, defeated you in combat, exposed your treason, and helped stop a coup. So I'll take playing dress-up over being a traitor." The guards led Seraphine away, still spitting curses. Her co-conspirators followed, their faces ranging from defiant to terrified. When the throne room finally emptied, leaving just Darian, Kale, and Riven, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. "You should rest," Darian said. Healer's orders. "I've been hearing that a lot lately, and ignoring it every time." He almost smiled. "You've done well, Riven. Better than I had any right to expect. Low bar. Accurate bar." He paused. "But you exceeded it anyway. Thank you." The words were simple, but coming from the Alpha King, they meant everything. 3 months later, the first snow of true winter fell on the Citadel. Riven stood in the training yard, working through forms with a group of young wolves. Not the elite guard. These were the ones like her, the ones who couldn't shift properly, whose transformations came out wrong or incomplete. "Again," she called out, "don't fight the hybrid state. Let it flow, find your balance." A young girl, maybe 13, with a malformed foreleg similar to Riven's, managed to hold her partial shift for nearly 2 minutes before collapsing, exhausted but triumphant. "That's progress," Riven said, helping her up. "Last week you could barely manage 30 seconds. "Will I ever shift completely?" the girl asked. Maybe not, but you'll get strong enough that it won't matter." It was the truth. Over the past months, Riven had trained 24 wolves like herself. The broken ones, the defective ones, the ones who'd been dismissed and discarded, and she was turning them into something formidable. "Guardian Riven!" A servant rushed into the yard. "The Alpha King requests your presence. Council meeting." Riven dismissed her students and headed inside, no longer limping. The injuries from the arena and the rogue camp had finally healed, though she'd carry the scars forever. The council chamber was familiar now. She had a permanent seat, not just as Kale's guardian, but as royal advisor on unconventional tactics. It was a made-up title, but it gave her authority to speak on military matters. "We've received word from the eastern border," Commander Gray was saying as she entered. "The exiled conspirators have been attempting to raise forces against us." "How many followers?" Darian asked. "Maybe 50, possibly fewer. Turns out nobody wants to follow someone who failed a coup and got caught." Gray actually smiled. "They're more nuisance than threat at this point." "Maintain surveillance anyway," Darian ordered, People get desperate when they're losing. The meeting continued. Reports on trade, border security, diplomatic relations with neighboring kingdoms. Riven contributed where appropriate, stayed silent when she had nothing to add. It still felt surreal sometimes, being here, being valued. After the council dispersed, Kale found her in the corridor. "How's the training going?" he asked. He'd grown in the past months, not much physically, he was still only 8, but in confidence and presence. "Good. We've got 3 who can hold hybrid form for 5 minutes now." "That's incredible," he grinned. "Father wants to integrate them into the regular guard. Create a specialized unit." "The Broken Guard?" "I suggested the Adaptive Forces. Sounds more official." His smile faded slightly. "Have you thought about what comes next, after this? After training defective wolves to be soldiers? After changing how the entire kingdom thinks about strength and worth, and who deserves to lead?" He looked at her seriously. "You've done something impossible, Riven. You've made them question everything they believed. That's not going to just stop." "I know." She'd been thinking about it a lot lately. "But I don't know what the next step is." "Maybe there isn't one. Maybe you just keep doing this, training, advising, being yourself. That seems to be working pretty well." Before Riven could respond, Darian appeared. "There you are. I need to speak with both of you." He gestured toward his private study. "Now." They followed him through familiar corridors to the study Riven had first entered months ago. But this time, when Darian closed the door, his expression was different, less guarded. "I've made a decision," he said without preamble, "about the kingdom's future, about succession." Kale went very still. "Father, you're 8 years old, too young to rule if something happens to me. But you won't be 8 forever." Darian sat on the edge of his desk. "And when you do take the throne, you'll need support, someone who understands both the traditional power structures and the new ones we're building." He looked at Riven. "I'm naming you co-regent, effective immediately. If I die before Kale comes of age, you'll rule alongside him until he's ready." The words didn't make sense. Riven's brain refused to process them. I can't, I'm not. You're a royal advisor who exposed a coup, trained an effective fighting force from wolves everyone else discarded, and helped reshape how this kingdom defines strength. Darian's expression was unreadable. "You're exactly what we need. The court will revolt. Some of them, others will adapt. That's how change works." "Say yes," Kale urged through their bond. "Please, I trust you. I need you." Riven looked at the young prince, no longer a wounded cub in the snow, but still the same person who'd chosen to trust her when no one else would. "On one condition," she said. Darian's eyebrow rose. "Which is?" "The training program for non-standard shifters becomes official. Funded, recognized, integrated into the military structure. We don't just tolerate them, we value them." "Done. And any wolf, regardless of rank or bloodline, can apply for guardian positions. Not just nobles." "Also done. And," Riven took a breath, "we stop calling them defective. We create new language, new categories, acknowledge that different isn't broken." Darian studied her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Agreed. On all counts." Riven shook his hand, feeling the weight of what she'd just accepted settle onto her shoulders. Co-regent. Her, the Omega they'd left to die in the snow. "You're insane," she said. "Probably," Darian agreed. "But so are you. We'll make it work." The formal ceremony happened a week later. The entire kingdom gathered, thousands of wolves filling the citadel grounds, watching as Riven Hale knelt before the Alpha King and received a silver circlet marking her new rank. "Rise," Darian said, his voice magically amplified to reach every ear. "Co-regent to the crown, guardian of the prince, protector of the realm." Riven stood, the circlet feeling impossibly heavy. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, others stood silent. A few nobles walked out in protest. But enough stayed, enough witnesses to make it real, to make it binding. After the ceremony, as nobles filed past offering congratulations or thinly veiled hostility, Riven found Marcus in the crowd. "Congratulations," he said, grinning. "From discarded Omega to co-regent in less than 6 months. That has to be some kind of record." "Record for stupidity, maybe." "Hey, you're the one who agreed to help rule a kingdom." His smile turned more genuine. For what it's worth, I think you'll be good at it. You see things differently. That matters. Different, Riven repeated. The word that had haunted her entire life, now somehow becoming her strength. As the celebrations continued into the night, Riven slipped away to the gardens. The winter flowers were blooming, rare moon blossoms that only grew in the harshest cold, white petals edged with silver. She'd heard stories about them, how they only appeared where blood had been spilled in sacrifice, where something had died so something else could live. The garden was full of them now, spreading from a single spot, the place where she'd collapsed after returning from the rogue camp, bleeding and exhausted. Beautiful, aren't they? Riven turned to find Darian standing behind her, out of formal regalia and looking almost human. They grew from my blood, she said. That's unsettling. That's symbolic. He moved to stand beside her, looking at the flowers. Moon blossoms represent transformation, the idea that suffering can create something beautiful if you survive it. Not sure I'd call my life beautiful. No. But you've made it meaningful. That's rarer. He was quiet for a moment. I never properly thanked you, for Kale, for everything. You appointed me co-regent. I think that counts as thanks. That was strategy. This is personal. He turned to face her. You saved my son's life, broke his curse, changed how he sees himself and how the kingdom sees him. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Riven's throat tightened. I just did what needed doing. Exactly. Without calculation, without asking for reward. Just doing what needed doing. He smiled, and it transformed his face. You're going to drive me insane as co-regent, you know that? Probably. Good. Means you're doing it right. Well, a cold wind swept through the garden, carrying the scent of snow and pine and moon blossoms. Somewhere in the citadel, Kale was probably wreaking havoc in the kitchens, charming extra desserts from the staff. Somewhere beyond the walls, the frontier stretched wild and dangerous. But here, in this garden full of flowers that grew from blood and sacrifice, Riven felt something she'd never experienced before. Peace, not the absence of conflict. She'd probably be fighting battles, political and otherwise, for the rest of her life. But peace with who she was, what she'd become. The broken Omega who'd saved a prince, the defective shifter who'd changed a kingdom, the girl left to die who'd chosen to live differently. Come on, Darian said, breaking the silence. We should get back before Kale convinces the kitchen staff to make him a cake the size of a horse. He wouldn't. He absolutely would. He's 8 and currently untouchable. It's a dangerous combination. They walked back together, and Riven realized with quiet surprise that she was smiling. Behind them, moon blossoms swayed in the winter wind, white petals catching moonlight like captured stars. They would spread, the gardeners said, cover the entire citadel grounds within a year, transforming the harsh stone fortress into something beautiful. Evolution, Riven thought, belongs to those who dare to be different. And in the northern frontier, under a winter sky full of stars and possibility, a new order was rising, one built not on perfection, but on the courage to survive, the strength to change, and the wisdom to value what others had deemed worthless. The broken had become the foundation, and from that foundation, something extraordinary was beginning to grow.